Hello, everybody. My name is Ron, and welcome back to Just a Little Guy, a podcast in which I collaborate with some of my favorite folks from all around the world to whip up a brand new batch of beasties for all your creative needs. Before we get started today, I just wanted to express my gratitude to all of our patrons whose support continues to make this show possible, especially those who contribute at the incomprehensible cosmic abomination level. Special thanks go out to Taru Tikkanen, D. Solari, and our newest patron, Lunchbox. Thank you all for your support, and if you'd like to help fund the collective creativity, feel free to mosey on down to patreon.com/justalilguy. That's Lil, as in the truncated version of Lilybell, the ancient slime monster that I just made up. Now then, it's time to get into the show. Today's guest is an accomplished artist and an activist. When he isn't helping folks migrate to Blue Sky, he's practicing character design and caring for foster pets. Please welcome to the show, Ben, also known as Hachiko. Hey, Hachiko, how's it going today?
Pretty good. Nice being here.
Oh, hey, thanks. I'm glad to hear it. It's great to have you. So, as most people would probably know, you do a lot of like character design, artwork, that kind of thing. I've mostly seen you. The first time I think I saw you was on Blue Sky, but you've had you have a very long, like, storied kind of portfolio kind of thing, I think is the wording I'm looking for here. I'm kind of going off the dome, so feel free to stop me.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I actually started, like, doing my work, as I would call it, like, right now. Like, at this point, it's like 2023. It's got to be 10 years now. I started doing my writing in 2013 on Tumblr. And that's when I really started studying, like, how writing specifically for social media worked. Like, how certain things would spread and go viral versus things that wouldn't. How different formats and sites ended up networking together and, like, amplifying each other. And I actually was primarily doing, like, most of my work on Tumblr up until what was known as, like, the porn ban, or, like, the not safe for work ban, in 2017, 2018. And that's when I started writing on Twitter. And now I'm watching the same thing happen to Twitter, so I'm moving to Blue Sky.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's amazing how things are kind of cyclical, you know. It will kind of be, this one place is, like, really good for this thing, and then suddenly they take away the one good thing about that site, and then everybody migrates to another place, and then it keeps on repeating. And hopefully the Blue Sky situation will last a little bit longer, but, you know, you can never be too sure.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, how it seems to come, like, after, like, a buyout or, like, a restructure. Like, with Tumblr, like, porn ban sounds a lot more risque than it actually was, but what happened was Tumblr sold its site to Yahoo, and Yahoo was like, okay, we need to do something about illegal content or, like, unwanted content on our website. How do we filter for this? And then they started adding things like bots that would automatically censor or ban users based on, like, algorithmic, but like it would scan images, like, to determine whether or not it might be pornography. And it was really bad at this back in, like, 2017, 2018. So, like, users were being flagged for safe for work content, and people left the site in droves, most of whom left for Twitter.
Yeah. Well, you know, fun fact, up until recently, I was a moderator for Yahoo, so I know all about that kind of stuff.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, there was all sorts of fun things that I dealt with there. But I just know what you mean when I say that their bots are, like, really inefficient and things like that. There would be things that came back that I'm like, they're literally saying a racist slur. They're just using different characters to do it. You know, so AI, not worried about it quite yet. Okay. Just gonna put that out there. But yeah, I know I can understand how, like, that kind of censorship, and, like, you're right. Whenever a buyout occurs, that's typically when this kind of thing happens, because they're like, well, we have a much better idea of how to run this website. We are much more, we're much more efficient. Like, we have this great vision. And then when they try to, like, you know, implement that vision, then it doesn't really seem to come to fruition the way they want it to. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get what you're putting down. Like that, I mean, I wouldn't say I feel like this goes unsaid, but like, I wouldn't say that this is a thing that's limited to social media. I feel like the thing that makes it interesting with social media is that it's such a new field that, like, when we see these changes happening, like, there's no precedent for it. Like, a lot of people talk about, like, now, like we mentioned Blue Sky, a lot of people were talking about the Twitter rebrand, and it's like, to tweet is a verb that has been absorbed in our English lexicon. Like, that's how strong the branding is. And we watched that happen over the course of like a decade or so ish that Twitter was around in the form that it was. There has been nothing like Twitter. There's been nothing like Twitter on the scope of like the people who were posting on it, like the amount of reach it had, both like on a governmental and like on a societal entertainment level. I'm excited to see where Blue Sky goes, but like it's hard to even like talk about like how social media is done because of the fact that, like, you know, it's so new.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's 20 years seems like a long time, but it's just like a blip, especially with regards to like technology and things of that nature. And for it to have grown at such an exponential rate and kind of get to where it is now, where, like you said, there's governmental figures on there. You know, we hear about legislation through this website now, this one website, and you know, it's just wild, like, to look at it and see it like where it is now and where it still needs to go. Like, these questions that still need answering, like, where does the limit to free speech like come up, like, kind of thing, you know? Because one of the things like that I've seen is people threatening like lawsuits about like, well, if I can't say this on here, then X, Y, and Z. And every time the same like thing comes back, it's like, you agreed to the terms of service, which includes you can't say this.
Yeah, it's weird. And like, I'm glad that like you brought that up, because like Twitter almost became like infrastructure. Like, there was one post that I saw in regards to the API changes, like the changes that allowed like people to manage their accounts with bots, where like a local government agency is like, hey, we can't post weather reports here anymore. We can't post like emergency weather things because we can't do it in real time like we used to, and people can't depend on that. And like, I think that that's wild, because like Twitter isn't intended to be an emergency alert system. Like, they have nothing in their thing that's like, okay, here's where, you know, somebody where a government agency can apply to have their weather reports. It's just like a government agency made a Twitter account and they do that. So like the idea that like something as important as like tornado warnings or fire warnings were operating on like on essentially a private website is fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's I don't think that when they started the site in 2005 or 6 or whatever, that they ever anticipated it having that much reach, you know, like that much influence on everything, that it was going to literally be a news outlet without being one in, you know, in so many words.
I'm actually curious to hear your opinion on this, because in 2005 I was in middle school, and I remember like the change of like to where everyone kind of had like a personal computer in their pocket. Like, we had the iPhone come out, was it like 2008? I'd say I don't remember.
Something like that, 2007, 2008, yeah, right around there.
And then like after that was just like this rapid development of like, oh, everybody just suddenly was always available and always had a computer on them in their pocket. And I'd say like that's part of why things develop the way that they are and continue to develop. It's just like everybody has that capacity now, or almost everybody.
Yeah, I feel like the impact of the iPhone and just the smartphone in general cannot be understated on our society today. It's really, it's like you said, fascinating to think about how this one little piece of technology that is so maligned, and maybe rightfully so, has influenced the direction that we as a society have gone in. I feel like you are onto something when you say that
the invention of the smartphone and the invention of the smartphone definitely, what's the word I'm looking for here? I feel like it initiated that amplification of like workaholicism kind of stuff, because you could because like you said, everybody's like there all the time, anytime you need something.
Exactly. Like, you're never truly idle. Like, you're never just sitting there, like, by yourself, unable to do something. You can always just whip your phone out of your pocket or talk to somebody or, like, side hustle. And it's weird for me, like, going into college with, like, that sort of thing accelerating around me, because I don't ever remember a time where it wasn't like that.
Right. No, I can imagine. It's hard for me to fathom back when I was graduating high school and we were just getting the flip phones, because to me that was the apex of technology at the time, was just like, I can call my friends from wherever I want. If I'm out like at the beach, if I'm out at the bar, I can just give them a holler and be like, hey, come on over. I don't even need to talk to them. I can just text them. Minutes, oh man, that's going to be a real pain in the butt. Now you folks don't even have to worry about minutes. So
you're like worried about data at this point. The thing about like about like smartphones and having this technology on us all the time, which is something that I want to bring up with you and propose, like, when we talk about like cultural myths and like that sort of stuff, like word of mouth, like transmission of like personal experiences and stuff. How do you think, like, the age of, like, the smartphone and, like, technology has affected, like, our cultural understanding of, like, cryptids? Like, because I watched, it's not that, like, we've dropped the concept, like, SCPs and everything, like, those are incredibly popular. People still enjoy, like, the concept of cryptids. But, like, how do you think, like, always being online, always being connected, and like always being able to share like what we see with the world has affected people's relationship with like myths like that?
That's a great question, because for the longest time, I feel like this was a thing that it's a pretty prevalent notion. For the longest time, people were able to go around and say things like, I've had an alien encounter, I've seen Bigfoot, I've seen X, Y, and Z, the Fresno Nightcrawlers. I don't know how long that thing's been a thing, but like, they've been able to say that kind of stuff. And while people would typically like dismiss them, they didn't have the ability to like whip out their phone and like record it, basically. Whereas now, if you want to have any kind of credibility whatsoever, and since cell phones are so ubiquitous, it's kind of one of those old adages from back in the day, pictures or it didn't happen. Like, it's much easier to be skeptical of this stuff now, but also if you were to have such an encounter, it would be easy enough to like record this. So I feel like it's kind of in some ways it's diminished our relationship to something like cryptids and mythological creatures and stuff like that, simply because it's easy enough to capture evidence if you were to, have such an encounter. But at the same time, because our technology has gotten so much better and we are able to do things like, photo editing, like video editing, stuff of that nature, the guy who made like the back rooms and stuff like that made it look so realistic that it's easier, I feel like now, despite having like that better technology, it's easier almost to trick people into thinking that these things are real or give off the illusion that they're real than it may have been back in, say, 1995 when the handy cam was just becoming a thing, so I think it's complicated. I think that in some ways, you can't go around just wildly claiming that you've encountered like extraterrestrials, but at the same time, you can sure make it look like you did. So
would you say like like our relationship with the concept of like cryptids is becoming less a thing of like, hey, this is an experience that happened to me. I got abducted by aliens. I saw this thing in the woods. And more toward like an avenue for self-expression, like transhumanism. Like, for example, like I can make myself a little 3D rig and puppet it, like live on stream. I can make myself into a little monster, like, and I've seen a lot of other people in my specific neck of the woods, which is like a lot more in the realms of like gender discussion. Like, I've seen a lot of people embrace the concept of like, I am a cryptid, like I do not fit into these understood categories of what it is like to be human or to be male or female. I exist outside of that, and I identify with cryptids because of that. Would you say like that would be more?
I could certainly. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I totally didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's an interesting thought that I hadn't really considered prior to you just bringing it up right now. But, with the influx of new people doing things like, making VTubers and things of that nature, that obviously wasn't available, way back in the day. Like, you could still come up with, like, characters that were more or less just self-insert for the author or for the creator or things of that nature. But we didn't have the available like technology to make it literally reflect us as a mirror, like that we could look at on the screen. Like, we couldn't just do the thing, like you said, like create a rig where if like you move your arms, it moves its arms, and it's like this completely different, new, original creation, like nothing anybody's ever seen before. So I feel like that's a really interesting thing, and I think that is probably more or less what a large group of people has kind of moved towards with regards to like cryptids and things of that nature, like trying to more express their individuality, which I think is a great thing. I feel like that's a much better what's the word I'm looking for here? It's a greater way to express yourself. Like, I can't come up with a way to like really express what I'm trying to say here. I just think it's really cool that like this is a thing that's available now that I've thought about it, like that you can truly make you into you, like online, using things like cryptids as a measuring stick, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that like I get the opportunity to talk to you and represent that perspective, because like given this podcast and the nature of what you do and what you're into, like it's cool like having that perspective, because like that's kind of like a thing that's that kind of goes like without saying in my community, like the trans community and the furry community, where it's like typically like when you have a character, like I have Hachiko, like Hachiko is me, but Hachiko is also like a character that exists outside of me. Like Hachiko is a fantasized, or see, now I'm having trouble finding the words, like a fantastical version of me in the way that I myself, Ben, am not. And I think like when we talk about cryptids, and like when we talk about like these like experiences that people have, we're not just talking about like, oh hey, like this is an animal that exists. We're also talking about like the experience of like being in nature, encountering like a life form that's outside of ourselves that we can't like understand, or maybe like don't even get like a full picture of, something that could threaten us or kill us, or something that like could like just decide to leave us alone. And I feel like that is like a whole, you know what I'm saying on that front? Like, I
think I understand what you mean.
Yeah. Like it's less, there are some things, there are some experiences that we as human beings have a difficult time putting into words. And I feel like when people talk about cryptids in particular, they are trying to capture like that experience that people like me are trying to capture through like transhumanism and character design and like the furry communities, that kind of stuff, like that air of like mystery that you can't really put into words.
Right. Because obviously And it goes without saying, everybody's experience is unique. And so to have the ability to kind of express that through like your own little, I don't want to say monster necessarily, because that feels like it's not really derivative, but like maybe dismissive, but like, or like just like, I don't know, but like to be able to express yourself in such a way is a really like just cool and interesting thing. And you know, when I set out to do this show, the thing about it is I was just like, hey, I just want to make some neat little monsters. But now I'm thinking about it on a whole existential level. So that's really fucking neat, I gotta tell you. Yeah.
I got an example.
So thanks for
bringing
that up.
If you wouldn't, if
sure, no, please.
So so when I was in college, I had the opportunity to meet like some amazing writers from like a variety of different perspectives, and several of them had a major impact on me. And usually when they do, I'll come up with some sort of animal for them. And I remember I was talking to an old friend, one of those people, an old friend of mine. I was talking about living in Athens and how like they had the statue of like Artemis and all that stuff. And how nice it was to live here, and like how, you know, like friendly and transpositive the community was relative to being back home in Florida.
Yeah.
And we started talking about it, and she was like, like I know you have this character, like we were talking about like how I have this character of like a crocodile for her. And she was like, I understand that like you picture me that way, like when you do like that sort of art, but like why specifically like a crocodile? Like what is it about like crocodiles? And I'm like, well, crocodiles are gorgeous. Like I specifically like have this image of like these leucistic, like the white crocodiles that have like these gorgeous scale patterns, and they don't survive that long in the wild because they're very obvious. Like they don't blend into their surroundings, but they are like absolutely beautiful, and they're powerful. Like they're just like that has that majesty, like when I was talking about earlier with like what a cryptid invokes. Like when you see one of these animals in the wild, it just invokes that feeling. And when I think of her and the way that her art and her work and her impact in the community makes me feel, like I think of her as this like powerful, like gorgeous writer, and that is what I am trying to deliver with my art. So like it's interesting to me, like as somebody who's involved in cryptid design, it's kind of like it almost seems like we're talking like about the same thing we're making art about, but like we have different reasons why we make art.
Right.
Like when I design,
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Nope, I was just saying I'm just writing something down. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Like when I design a cryptid for somebody, I do it because I want to invoke that feeling when I think of them. Like if I make a character for somebody, and that is the magic that I am trying to pull out with my art. And I think it's interesting to think about somebody making like the same sort of art, like how you would design a cryptid, but for a different reason, because like we're pulling the magic from different places, but the end result is something that we can both relate to.
That's true. That makes a lot of sense, because like you said with like the crocodile thing, you see it as like something majestic and gorgeous, and something that, like you said, doesn't blend into its surroundings necessarily, but it has this level of majesty and things like that just strikes you in a way that it reminded you of your friend. Whereas other folks might have like a fear response to that kind of thing. You know, they might not see the majesty right away, you know, that kind of thing. But when you point it out, then it becomes more obvious, and then there's more of an understanding. And, you know, it's a greater thing, I think, for just people in general to kind of have more, I don't know if like empathy or sympathy is like the word for it, but like just a greater attempt to understand each other. And to use cryptids like in that way makes a lot of sense.
We all bring our own experiences to the table when we make art. And I think that's a good point that you brought up, because like a lot of people don't understand like transhumanism, because it's like, why do you see yourself as a monster? But like,
yeah,
there's beauty in monstrous things. There's an element of like you know, sort of. Do you get what I'm putting down?
No, absolutely. There is definitely a beauty in monstrous things. Just simply because it's so unique and something that nature can put forth, not necessarily without any, or rather, oh my lord, I'm slipping over my words. Without any like, what's the phrase I'm looking for here? Without any precedence, really.
Nature's not made for us.
Kind of thing.
People are not made for the consumption of other people. And, like, sometimes being monstrous and being beautiful or fantastic for yourself is enough. And, like, that I think is where I'm heading on here.
Yeah, and I think that people should really embrace that kind of attitude more, because the way that I'm going to get kind of like deep here. When I started like going to therapy and things of that nature, which is not anything I've really discussed on this show before, but when I started going to therapy, I had some major self-esteem issues. And the more that I have like thought about it, the more I'm like, I'm good enough for like myself. And that's really all you can be, is like good enough for yourself, like accepting enough of yourself, beautiful enough for yourself, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so that has kind of helped me not only write my own self-image, but just my, what's the phrase I'm looking for here? Just my attitude in general, because I no longer look at things as, does this measure up to my standard necessarily? It's more a matter of, can I appreciate this thing? If not, I am okay with that, or can I appreciate spending time with this person? If not, that's okay. Like, does this person appreciate spending time with me? If not, that's okay. Like, you need to, it's important to learn to accept yourself and accept others, and also be able to let it go if you just recognize that like those things they don't mesh. They're not simpatico, or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Is that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, so like we kind of we've sort of like talked around that, both with like talking about like the advent of social media and always having to be like on all the time, and also like the idea of like being monstrous and like accepting yourself for just existing. Like, the idea that you always have to be like the best version of yourself in like any sort of interaction, that you have to put on your best face, is like exhausting. Nobody can live up to those expectations. And like giving yourself the space to just kind of be like you is hard, because like when we think about like, oh yeah, just be yourself, it's like, oh, you mean like the nice little polished of myself that everyone likes? And it's like, no, like the best interactions that I feel like we can have with each other are the ones in which we can be ourselves, or like be at our most relaxed, no matter how monstrous that might appear to other people. And I feel like you eventually just find the situations and the people in your life that like make you feel like comfortable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Having a great so it's another kind of thing that I've noticed in like the LGBT community as well, is just that you kind of, in a lot of cases, you have to make your own family, and mm-hmm. that usually involves like having really good friends surrounding you at all times. And I feel really fortunate, and I feel like a lot of folks, I don't know if like everybody can relate to this or not, but I have been fortunate enough to like be able to find some really great people to like surround myself with, and just be able to be myself, like kind of have these like moments of vulnerability with them. And it's been just great for like myself, and I'm really hoping that others have the same experience. It's a very important thing, I think, for folks to be able to seek that out. I don't know where I was going with this sentiment, but I think that you're definitely onto something there.
I like what you said with that. It's interesting to me because like when people talk about the LGBT community, because a lot, not saying that you do, like this is just like me speaking hypothetically to make a larger point later on.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people view, the royal you, the you. I feel like a lot of people consider the LGBT community to be like a big monolith, and like they're oh my god, like anybody who is
No.
yeah, and there is consistent and constant infighting over many issues of concern in our community. There's no one agreed upon anything. However, the one thing that LGBT people can generally agree upon is that we have always felt like we're different, and like I think that is why, I guess, like at some level, like we identify a lot with like a lot of LGBT people identify with like transhumanism or like with the furry community or like the concept of like being different in a way that like doesn't necessarily put you in a crowd of people like yourself, but of other people that can understand what it's like to not be understood. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I was going to say,
yeah. Go on.
To add to your list, you know, along with the transhumanism, like the appreciation of like the furry community, things like that. I think that it's also reflected in the general appreciation for horror in the LGBT community. And I feel like that's, again, kind of like a cliche that's brought up over and over again. But with how many like queer-coded like villains and stuff that there are, you know, I feel like my favorite part of going into like horror movies is like the villain, no matter what. And they're always smarmy or they're always really cool. And for whatever reason, like they're also typically like queer coded. And I feel like that's why the horror community has a lot of like LGBT fans. Like a lot of LGBT folks are fans of the horror community or fans of the horror genre, like in general, because obviously there's like the thing, like body horror is a big thing in that community, just because, you know, you don't feel like you're necessarily totally, how am I going to phrase this? Like, it doesn't feel like you're necessarily in control of everything at all times, I guess, kind of thing, or like you're constantly evolving.
It's a different sort of like relationship to your body in which like you understand that things are off in a particular way, and many different people have ways of describing their relationships. Like there's plenty of different takes on the trans experience, for example, but like, yeah, I get what you're putting down, like the body horror being like, okay, this is like a way of expressing my unusual relationship with the self. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, and I've seen it. I've like I will absolutely admit that I am like I'm the biggest baby in the world when it comes to gore. Like I will cringe. But like most of my friends love horror. And like I've actually been meaning to catch up. We need to do more movie nights and watch some horror stuff. I know next to nothing about the genre, and all my friends are like, "Oh, have you heard of this thing?" And I'm like, "No, you have to show me."
I know what you mean. Even though I call myself a big like fan of the genre, I'm just like, no, I haven't actually seen that, buddy. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like my friend, I'm friends with this group offline, and one of them is Zoe B, and she's like, what do you mean you haven't seen Pacific Rim? And we've been making plans to watch Pacific Rim for probably a year now.
Well, whenever you get around to it, it's very good. I feel like you'll enjoy it.
That's what I keep hearing.
It's so good. I saw it like freaking years ago, and I still remember it. Like it is so good. It makes me want to actually care about like kaiju movies, but which probably sounds horrible to anybody with taste. Like I'm sure like they're like, oh, that's what made you care. Like it's like, yeah, well, it's the first one I was exposed to, and it was hot. Like it was good.
Yeah. No, I mean it sounds like it's a blast. Like in so many different ways. Like I didn't know it was directed by Guillermo del Toro. Like I didn't know anything about it. And then, you know, she just says like, look, you need to watch this movie. And now everybody has an opinion on it too, by the way, is the other thing.
Oh, that's
like,
funny.
I was like paying attention when it came out, and I was like, this is not going to stick around. This is going to be like a thing like for like a summer. And now 20 years later, almost, it's like, no, you got to go see this. Yeah, that is quite a conversation. Let me see here. I think I'm gonna as a little editing note, I think I'm going to like intersperse like different parts of that conversation like throughout the episode,
oh yeah,
just to like kind of break it up, like put in like, here's a monster, here's this conversation, here's another monster, you know, if I can do that. If not, then we're going to have a big old opening segment, and that's okay. I am totally fine with that. This has been a lot of fun talking with you, just like shooting the shit about like all of these topics.
I honestly think it's really cool that like, because I like in the prep for this episode, I'm like, should I like mention the transhumanism and the furry stuff and the fairy and stuff? I'm sure they know. I'm sure like this is a thing. And then like I'm understanding like that we come from like completely different like communities on this front, so I think it's really cool that I can be like, hey, do you know that like I come from the circle of people who put on the monster costumes and go run around the woods and like yeah like, and I think that's great. And I think like in the future, like if you do more interviews with people like me, like that would be awesome, because I know there's a lot of people who can talk more about like how they feel in that regard in a way that I can.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I find this really fascinating. I love having like members of the LGBT community and members of like the furry community, you know, the folks who identify with like cryptids and stuff like that. Like, I love having folks like of the transhumanism community. I'm still getting used to that phrase, so I apologize for that.
Oh, but no, you're fine.
It's so cool just to have like these different perspectives on things, because before we'd had this conversation, I had never thought about like making monsters in such a way of like reflecting other people that like I already know. I just kind of think of them as like literally, here's a one-off little guy, you know, like hence the show title, you know. I
mean, if you want to talk about it once we get into monster design, like that's how I approach doing the protogens. Like the protogen species is like very open, and like it's very easy to like kind of slap on like Inspector Gadget style like different gadgets that I feel like people would like, and like that's kind of where I went with it, because it's like, you know, like, hey, you like gardening, I'm gonna make it so that you have like a hydraulic system in your ass, like that, like it's easy to do that. And I thought that was really fun, and people like that. So like that's kind of like how I you know what you get what I'm saying on that front. Like it's like
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
I can smell what the rock is cooking, so to speak. Yeah. Oh, I do have a question for you. So what recommendations do you have for folks who want to be more active in their community efforts? Because you're very active in like charitable things, in like the trans community. What do you recommend as like first steps? So
I think like a lot of people who don't know where to start in their community, I feel like a lot of people like want the answer of like, do I show up to church? Do I show up to my local org or whatever? The biggest hurdle I see with a lot of people that want to do work in their communities is that they're not talking to the other people that like live in their communities. Like they're not actively seeking out like, oh, hey, like this person lives in my community and makes art here or does this work here. I should show up and talk to them. They kind of like have this idea that like in order to be an activist, it has to be something that you do 24/7 all the time. But like the biggest improvements I've seen to a community are when everybody just sort of is like, hey, I'm available to help. I can help you with this thing. Oh, you're trying to sell your car that's been sitting in the front of your house for like a year and a half, but like you need some help finding somebody to sell it. I'm gonna help you put up a Craigslist listing, or I'm gonna help you jump it when the guy comes to buy it, or whatever. Like there's so many ways that people can just like lend a hand on like a small level that end up having a larger impact, whether it's like, okay, you help that person and they have some more money now and they're a little less stressed out because they don't have to deal with that anymore. People think like, oh, I want to help my community. I got to go fundraise thousands of dollars for charity. I got to go to town hall. Sometimes it's just literally helping a neighbor is the best place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Building a strong community is, feels like it would be tantamount to that kind of thing, you know, and just by doing like things that could be considered as little to just help out like that little bit could give somebody like the extra motivation, the extra oomph, like to kind of go on and continue their day, you know, because I definitely feel you when it comes to like the car example. Like if you need somebody to like jumpstart your car, you know, and they they do. Like, you know that you have that person that you can kind of rely on. You know, you have somebody that cares enough to help you out like that much. You know.
Yeah, and I think like people are just like afraid to develop those relationships with like other people for like many reasons, like, you know, societally, like this trauma that we all go through, like the high school experience of thinking that everyone hates you and then becoming an adult and unlearning that. Like, there's so many different layers as to why people won't be like, why people won't reach out. And like, I will tell you, like, doing those little things, like in my community in particular, like the people that I work with on a daily basis, my neighbors and stuff, like I have seen the difference that happens when a bunch of neighbors help each other out in small things and they all have the space to breathe. Because like if you help this one person with this one thing that they can't do on their own, they help you with that, and like all of these tasks that were overwhelming to all of you are suddenly like alleviated. Like, you have that space to breathe. You have that space to think, like, hey, I'm stressed out and I've been overworked and, like, shit, like, maybe I really should start looking for a better job. Maybe I really should do something about, you know, what's going on in my community. I don't like what's hearing in the news. Maybe me and my buddies should show up. It gives you that space and time to think. And I know it sounds, like, really weird for me to say, like, hey, like, helping your neighbor do their errands or whatever will ultimately lead to you having the capacity to take on bigger problems. But, like, it works.
No, absolutely. I feel like that's completely true. I've seen that's solid advice. Thank you.
But ultimately, I will say, like, if anybody is interested in doing things like if they are interested in fundraising for charity, or like they know a local 501c3 that like a shelter or like a community center that wants to fundraise and they're not really sure how to like go from in-person fundraising to like online fundraising on Twitch, I am available. And folks can feel free to reach out because that's kind of what I'm here for. I'm trying to help more people have access to the resources that they can use to help their communities.
Absolutely. I think that's an invaluable, what the hell am I trying to say here? That's a really invaluable service that you provide, like helping others, as well as like doing the charitable work yourself. Yeah, I think that just gold star MVP right there. Bang.
Thank you.
Put it right on your name. Yeah, no problem. You can't see it because it's only in the notes on Discord, but you know. But it's there. Also, when you're designing characters, you know, sometimes you get hung up on like on things. What's the most you've ever been like kind of experienced like creator's block while designing a character, and what's like the hardest design choices you've had to make?
Oh my god. So the protogens for me have been like the easiest, but the hardest character designs that I've had to do were like when I am like dealing with like a species that there's not a lot of like reference for. Like for me, I have a reindeer, which is probably like the worst mistake I could have made starting out in regards to character design, because like, well, I can find a lot of resources for like what reindeer look like. When you're designing a character for like a particular style, like they don't look exactly as the animal would look like in real life. So when you're invoking like specific characteristics from like species that aren't as in the public consciousness, you need to kind of like figure out ways to make it work while still like making your character work within the style that you're in. You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, I understand what you mean. Like figuring out a way to make it obvious that this is the type of character that you're building, but also making it fit like within your style and like not making it like something completely different, I guess is what I'm trying to go with here as well, right?
Yeah.
Like make it readable, but yeah. No, I get that completely. Like especially when it comes to something like you said, with a lot of like reference points, or without a lot of reference points for that matter, like it could certainly be easy to kind of mess something up, or like, you know, it might take a little bit of time to to like really flesh it out to like a way that, or to a degree that you're satisfied with, you know.
People joke about like the furry
yeah.
same face where like every furry looks like a dog, like even the deer furries look like dogs. But the style like of like the dog furry has been done so many times that like when you're designing a character, you need to know like how anger would translate like on its face, or like how sadness, or like how those different emotions would look when drawing this character. You can find a lot of references for the dog face. Not so much for like how do you show sadness on a deer? Like how do you show sadness on like on a herbivore of a long snout that doesn't have like the same sort of lips or cheeks a human would? Like it's a lot of conflicting sort of you have to deal with a lot of conflicting factors in deciding what you're keeping and what you're cutting.
Right. No, that is another thing I hadn't really considered when it came to like the furry art and stuff like that, is that like, yeah, I guess the dog reference point is pretty common. I guess it might not be quite as easy to express emotions in something like an elephant or like a bear or anything like that. Well, I guess a bear would be a little bit easier because it's a little bit closer to like dog, you know, it's got like a shorter snout kind of thing. Like, you can make it work. There's also like a bunch of like Disney movies where that feature, you know, bears, like in anthropomorphic like styles and stuff. But I get what you mean though. Like if you're trying to draw it so that it reads like that thing, and yeah.
The elephant is actually a really good example because last night I was watching Mosley, and I can write down the name so you can get the spelling of it later. But it's a movie that has the species of like animal in it that's essentially an elephant, but they're meant to be sentient and like they're meant to be like an actual race of people that are just elephant shaped. So in the design of the character, they dropped the snout, they dropped the trunk, and they just gave it like a little stout little nose. And it translates a lot better to expressing emotions on the face because you can see like the full lips and everything. But it is very weird to see these like elephant-like creatures with these elephant feet, backs, like with these like short little like Moomin style noses. And I thought that was really
that is really interesting. I don't know that I would have taken that direction, but like that's, I mean that's, I just kind of figured it would be difficult like to, you know, make it read elephant and like also show emotion. But like if you're like the way I'm picturing this, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's like elephant features like giant ears and stuff like that with like the, okay, never mind, I'm seeing what you placed down here. Yeah, that's
me furiously pecking in the background. I was like, I can't describe this, but yeah, like there's like, I don't want to give anything away, but that's not like the end all design for that creature. But like
sure,
I saw this in the thing in the trailer, and I'm like, I have to see how they did this.
Yeah,
but like that's
I would probably describe this. What's that? I'm sorry.
But that's like that's a kid's character design element that I wouldn't have like thought of. It's like how do you render it with the trunk? How would you describe it?
Yeah. Oh, I would describe it as like, I think you nailed it with like the Moomin nose personally. If I had to describe it like on my own, I would say it looks like the donkey from Shrek, but with like longer rabbit-like ears, goat horns, and the body of an elephant, or maybe a hippopotamus even.
Yeah.
But, yeah. That's really interesting. I've never seen that before.
It's a really.
I guess it would be a lot easier to express emotion on that, though.
Yeah, and like they do really well. Like I went to that movie being like, oh, this is gonna be weird. It's gonna be bad. And then I'm just like as the movie goes on, it got weird, but it also got really good. And I'm like, you know, like you like they really managed to like hit you in the feels. Like you were like crying for this weird little elephant creature by the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I figured I'd let you know about that.
Well, thanks for the heads up. I'm probably gonna have to track this down now because I'm curious to see what it looks like. Mosley. Okay, I gotcha. I thought it was spelled a little bit differently, but that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I will definitely be sure to look that up. All right. Would you like to move into designing our first monster now that we're an hour into the show?
Yeah, I am sorry about that.
No, not at all. It's great conversation. I really appreciate it. So Ben, again, as we discussed, you do a lot of character design work. It's really cool. It's really deep, as it turns out.
Thank you.
So now we are going to create some monsters of our own. And the way that we do that is we rely on the Monstermatic 5000, not the 4000 or the 6000, despite what past round might have said, in order to generate some prompts, let's say, for monsters. And I don't know if you can hear the sound effect in the background, but it's going. It's going, and it's about done. Okay. And I'm just gonna rip. Okay. So the first thing that we're gonna do today is a name for a monster. And so I'll just say the name. We kind of come up with an appearance or whatever, where you think this thing might live, what powers it might have, and we kind of go from there. So the first monster that we got here from the Monstermatic 5000 is called the Clutterbuck. So what kind of image does that conjure in your brain?
The Clutterbuck. Okay, I am biased, of course, but my first thought was, of course, deer. Have you ever seen like what a deer looks like when the antlers don't form right? Because when I think Clutterbuck, like I think of like the sound like antlers make when they hit each other, and my first thought was just like a bundle of antlers. Sort of like when the antler splits and it grows wrong into like a mass.
Ooh, interesting. Almost like a rat king, but with antlers. Yeah,
it looks kind of like that. I wish I could remember if there's a name for exactly what I'm describing. But like that, I've always been I have such a soft spot for weird deer. The concept of like you're out in the woods and you see a deer and it doesn't look quite like a deer because it's not a deer. And that's usually like an indication that you're in a place where you're not supposed to be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I think I've also heard of that before where like antlers will get like tangled up and like maybe the fight will be so like fierce that they'll become like detached from like, you know, the two bucks that are fighting.
Oh, they'll straight up walk together and they'll die that way. You get two bucks that walk together like that. They can't get their antlers unstuck. Actually, that's an image. I don't know if you've seen that, but when that happens, usually only one of them dies. And the one that dies, the head will detach. Like the neck is not the sturdiest thing, and you just have like a full-grown buck wandering around with just like a skull locked into its antlers, staring at it at all times. Usually
wow,
the buck
that's
doesn't look
terrifying.
It's scary looking. The first time I saw it, I was just like, oh my god, like that sounds like a fate worse than death. Just to have like the losing, like the losing, slowly decomposing flesh of your opponent just like inches away from your face. Like that's scary.
That's terrifying. Holy cow. I wow. Okay. So perhaps the Clutterbuck might be like some kind of a creature that has antlers, that has maybe like really like big, like a huge like rack of antlers that like it's fought many things, and so it has many like deer skull and like goat skulls and stuff just like hanging off of it because it's such a proficient like fighter.
Yeah, like it has like the trophies, kind of like I can't remember what the name of the bird is. It's a butcher bird. Like how a butcher bird will have all of its trophies on like in its territory. That's kind of what I'm picturing when you say like the different antlers walked into like this Clutterbuck.
Yeah, like that seems like it could be like a really intimidating like thing to run into, especially if it's like, I don't know, like I'm kind of picturing like this thing could probably blend in with like the forest, you know, you got some brush and stuff like that, and its antlers kind of like blend in with that.
Yeah, like when you were initially describing like the massive antlers, I was picturing like kind of like the brush I've seen along like the canals back home in Florida, like how like the bramble will kind of like grow together into like this impassable sort of thing where you can kind of see through it. Like maybe you could see a bird sometimes floating through it, but it's like really hard to see through. Kind of breaks up the outline of anything that's on the other side of it.
Yeah, like it creates like almost like a fog of sorts that, like, you know, if you're going to put it in like D&D terms, I guess. So do we think that these antlers might be so big that they would obscure the actual creature?
I think that could be really interesting because then you have like sort of like a tumbleweed concept where like you have like this like massive growth that is not the creature that's in control of it, but sort of like an exterior armor. And then you have like the other things that are walked into it. But like, does that mean like the creature that has like the Clutterbuck itself, like the animal that's attached to these antlers, is it just like a small little animal underneath like a mass of antlers, like a tumbleweed on top of its head, sort of mentally I'm picturing? Or is it like a massive creature with a massive rack to match?
That's a great question. I had not thought about that because, see, now that I'm thinking about, you mentioned like the tiny animals. Now I'm thinking about like, for some reason, the thing that came to mind for me. Have you ever seen Eraserhead?
I have not seen it, but I believe I know. I believe I know the thing you're referencing.
So there's a baby in Eraserhead, a so-called baby. It's a movie about like the fears of fatherhood, kind of, sort of, is what I gathered from it. And like it looks kind of like this, or it's maybe not going to send. I don't know.
I've
but it's like
Googled this, and
yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah.
So like that maybe hanging from like the center of it, because I imagine that this whatever poor critter is stuck in here has not had a chance to maybe like fully develop in a way that's like normal, I guess. You know, like I imagine it would be like pale and like squishy, and you know, it's surrounded by these things at all times, unless it's something that is like retractable or like
that metastatic antler growth takes so much energy that it's just like the rest of the body is underdeveloped, like this sad thing you sent me. Oh my god!
Yeah,
its little mouth is what gets me the most. Like I was talking earlier about like the dog faces with furries, and like there are other options, and this is one of them. But oh god, like it's like a combination of like it's got like this is probably horrible, and maybe like this is not
horse eyes.
Yeah, or like a dolphin's like sad eyes, like it's like the sad like it's not like fully capable of expression, but like you want to feel for it. God,
yeah.
The little mouth.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'd never really looked at it that closely. I just kind of always pictured it as like a little chicken thing, essentially. But now that I'm looking at it and I see that it's got like more of a mouth than a beak, I'm like, oh. That thing has lips. It's smiling.
Oh god.
Yeah.
I'm looking at like the size, like the relative size of this prop.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's a trans pride Eraserhead baby poster.
Of course there is. Why wouldn't there be?
Just like scrolling through the references, and like there's it's mostly just pictures of this thing at like behind the scenes, and it's horrifying from every angle. And then in the middle of it, I'm just gonna send this to you. Oh
Sure.
god.
Did somebody do an illustration of it?
No, I guess this counts.
Oh my, okay.
I love this whole, like, there's just so many. Oof, there's a GIF too. Oh, I'm gonna have to see this movie.
It's disturbing. Like, it's also one of those movies where, like, okay, spoiler alert for Eraserhead. If you haven't seen it, it's like, it's been forever. So, but like, there's this droning sound that happens in the background that's just so unsettling, and it goes on through the whole movie. And like personally, it made me depressed like afterwards. And I don't know if it was just because of the sound or like what the situation is. Maybe it was just like the whole film in general, but like it's like it really adds a layer to this like baby thing. Like I gotta tell you.
Is the sound like ever acknowledged, or is it just like a background like effect, like almost like a music meant to like keep you on like in a sense of unease the entire movie? Like, is it ever just like? Oh, I also just sent you. So yeah.
So the way I would describe it as it's kind of like an ambient thing. That's never really acknowledged. I think it's just supposed to be like unsettling, like for the sake of being unsettling, but it's definitely present. And when you notice it, like you'll notice it never stops. It's just like, have you ever listened to the band Sun O?
No, but
okay.
Like I get what you're putting down though, because I have a buddy that makes atmospheric music with that sort of like effect.
Yeah. It's just like that, except I don't think any other musical notes like in the background. It's just this buzz, this constant hum.
It's the horrors of fatherhood and tinnitus.
Yeah. Apparently the baby is also known as Spike according to the Eraserhead wiki, which I would not have guessed was its name. It looks like the least spiky thing.
I'm picturing like a meme of like you know, ever see like the meme where it's like the white woman baby names and it's just like different like different alternate spellings. I'm picturing that, and the last one just Spike, and she's holding like the little Eraserhead baby.
Yeah, and it's like something like SPYK or something like that. Or SPEIK. I don't know. Oh, great stuff. So we've essentially established that the Eraserhead baby is living inside of a cluster of antlers and is just rolling around taking skulls.
Did you ever see that one movie Tire?
No, I haven't. It's been on my Netflix list for at least 20 years now.
Okay, but you know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm picturing. I'm just picturing like this thing just rolling around like a tumbleweed. We haven't decided where it lives yet. I don't think. But like I'm just picturing it rolling around like that. Like in the movie Tire, but as a tumbleweed, just like taking victims.
Oh my god. That's awesome. Like, yeah, no, I think that would just be like, that would have to be its mode of operation. Maybe that's how it keeps itself sustained as well, is because like it's such a massive thing that it just like crushes whatever is in its way underneath its weight. And like, because of the coarse nature or the just the nature of antlers in general, like they're curved, they're pointy, things like that, it just breaks down like any kind of organic material, and like it just drips through and is just like going into this thing's like little disgusting mouth.
Yeah, I love that. I love this concept for it.
Oh god, I'm so just disgusted that I have thought of this. Okay, so what else do we think we need to add to this guy besides like figuring out its background, like what maybe weaknesses it has? I guess that the fact that it's like, if you break through the antlers, the fact that it's like a tiny little squishy thing is probably a good enough weakness.
Have you seen those like little seeds? I forget what they're called. The locals here apparently call them gumballs. They're like little seeds. They've got like this spiny outer layer, and you crack them open, and they're like hollow on the inside. That's how I'm picturing like the antlers working. Like the antlers are super spiky, but like once you get through, like you're through. So I'd imagine like if something got into it, can this thing be poisoned, or is it too repulsive?
That's a good question. Is it too repulsive to poison? That's a good question.
I gotta go. Yeah,
that
like that.
the kind of
Yeah,
thing-
that's it.
Yeah.
That's the gumball.
Yeah, I could see that definitely being like that. Just with a little guy inside, you know.
Just like if you were a farmer that like had that raised horn-bearing animals, you had to go out and like salt your fields for the Clutterbucks. So then just Katamari Damacy your entire herd like one night.
Yes. That's another thing too. Do you think there would be multiple, or do you think this is one of those ones where it's just like a one dude, like one little like thing rolling around, you know, wreaking havoc?
Did you ever see, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. Did you ever see that one episode of Futurama with like the ball people? Like where they invaded and they were just bouncy? Yeah. That's what I'm picturing if there were multiples of them. And that's just, like, that is horrifying with, like, the picture that we have created.
Timothy the Great once bounced 2 feet, then 3 feet, and then 5 feet, and then 3 feet.
Yeah. Exactly that.
That would be really interesting if there was a community of them. Even though they have like these antlers, do you think they would be bouncy? Do you think they would like? I guess this could go back to like where they live. Like, do you think that they would maybe like live in water where they would have more ability to like do stuff like that? Is that like their means of having fun?
Like would they bounce? Like would they socialize? Like with the size that I imagine these things being, like, I am open to this concept, but it is also like a terrifying one. Like if they move like together as like a herd, like I'm almost picturing like a sandstorm style effect. Like, have you ever seen those pictures of cities where like they have like this like wave of just like the sand from the sandstorm just like rolling through? Like, that's what I'm picturing with these antlers, because it would obscure like the small babies inside and just be like a clattering mass of branches.
That's and
I'm down for that.
Yeah, no, me too. I think that's a really cool idea. I'm sorry, just to clear up, did we say that they do live in the water, or that they're amphibious, like they go both, like they could be on both?
Oh, I think you cut out like for a moment, a second there, because I didn't hear you say water.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. There's also like a thunderstorm rolling through, so if I cut out mysteriously, it's because I've lost power. I doubt I will though. Yeah. But yeah, no, like that's the thing that like would moving like this and being like this mass of like antlers be beneficial to living underwater, because like it would seem like they would just be like dragging all of this weight around. I pictured them more as like, oh, there's so much mass that they would be moved around by like wind.
That's an interesting idea. I think that I don't know if we've had one where it's been moved around by wind yet. Maybe in the Zoe episode, we had one that was called the Dusty Harry, and that was just like a virus, more or less, that was like in dust on books. But we've never had one where like their primary like method of transport, like besides like just rolling and, like you said, katamariing like all over everything, would be like wind. That's a really interesting concept.
Well, you've got like this little tiny squishy creature like inside of it, and like most of its growth is going to be dedicated toward this outer mass. Like, you've got creatures like anemones. Actually, no, specifically the thing that I think would be more appropriate for this is like how a jellyfish exists. Like, a jellyfish doesn't actively like hunt for prey; it just kind of like drifts. And like I'm thinking just like this huge mass of just horns just like rolling around and stuff. Like, it doesn't have to move so much on its own, because anything it rolls over is just its now, you know?
Yeah, no, that's kind of, I think that makes a lot more sense. And it's a lot more threatening too, because if you're walking along a nature trail and you're not paying attention, suddenly you're a part of this thing. You know, like I imagine it's also got like rib cages and stuff like that stuck inside of it from like unwitting like travelers and things of that nature. But mostly like the bones of like, you know, or the antlers and stuff of like of deer and goats and maybe steers and stuff like that. You know, anything that's just been in the way. But I
think
can
it's a good
totally see
idea.
just like, yeah,
Because
Yeah.
if it rolls over like on an individual level, like if it gets a sword stuck in there, or if it gets like part of a wagon, like it instantly becomes a little bit more dangerous just by the nature of having like these non-organic parts stuck inside it.
yeah.
I like this little.
I hadn't thought about like the weapons. Me too. This guy is weird, but I like him too. I think that's really a unique or an original concept. I repeat myself, but I like him.
I'm glad that I finally got to invoke the gumballs, because every time after the first time I saw that, I'm like, I have to do something with that, and I've been using it for like terrain for figures. Like I've been taking pieces of them, repainting them, and using them for like D&D figure terrain. But like
that's cool.
They just look so like they look so weird. Like
it
just
looks
stuck
like
in my
something
mind.
out of a it looks like something out of like a different world.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's a really fascinating thing that I feel like I've seen before, but I'd never really considered. And yeah, I've never also thought about the ways that a tumbleweed could be threatening. You know, so we've done a good job of mixing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Plant design like is really interesting to me, because like a lot of the times like plants are like put aside to the margins. Like there aren't a lot of plant furries. But like when you look at like plants and like how they grow and all the weird kind of niche things that they do, like you get a lot of like weird stuff where it's like, oh, this would be a really cool concept for like a biological weapon or like an exterior design. I walked out into my garden earlier, and I've got a sunflower head that's halfway developing, and you can see all of the little white sunflower seeds just like poking out, and it's just like a solid layer of like just seed. And it's tough, and I'm like, this would be like a really cool concept for like the outside of like a scaly creature or something, to have like a texture like that made of seeds.
Yeah.
But like you see plants all the time, so like it's not like something that like that's brought to your attention as much as it should be.
No, you never think about. Frankly, I feel like a lot of people just never think of them. But like, you never think of them really as threatening unless they have some kind of demarcation that makes them seem threatening. Like if you see a giant Venus flytrap, you know, hey, probably not going to go near that. Actually, wait a second, it has a donut on its tongue. Give me one moment. You know. But like, if you see something just like that looks more or less innocuous, like if I look outside right now and I see like shrubbery, you know, I never think, well, that could potentially kill me, you know. Whereas like, again, now I see this dude and I'm like, well, now tumbleweeds could potentially kill me.
Well, a lot of that too is like
into existence.
Yeah, and like a lot of that too, I think, is like a sense of scale, because like if this thing were like the size of like of our creature, or if the Clutterbuck was like the size of a gumball, it wouldn't be that dangerous. But like we have it scaled up to like the size of like a goat or like a sheep or like a deer, like where it would present a threat. Like there's a lot of things with plants that are dangerous at scale. Like you have peppers, and we don't think about like the fact that peppers are spicy, but like the spiciness of peppers evolved as a defense mechanism for much smaller creatures than us. And that spiciness could be like threatening to a different animal. But like we don't really think about it just like, oh, it's just like, you know, it doesn't really affect us because we're so big. Scaling up plants is always fun to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. I think that's what made Poison Ivy one of those characters that really stuck around, like with the Batman, you know, fans and stuff like that, you know, is because it's different, and it's like, plants can be scary too, guys, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But I hadn't really thought about the way I never related that to like peppers or anything before. So do we want to like come up with some kind of like tragic backstory for this guy? Like, is there a reason why it's like been able to collect these things, or is it just like...
Like, do you like is like in the sense of like that this was created through like a specific thing as opposed to like a species that just exists? I like the idea of like it being something where like So I don't know if you know this, but like animals like deer will eat meat. If there's a deficiency in their diet, or if they have like a specific need for like that protein, they will eat birds, other small animals. So like the concept of like, oh, like this is an animal's body that's overtaken by growth and now it needs to sustain itself seems like a cool idea to me. Like it's like, oh, it's become this massive tumbleweeds now, and now it needs flesh.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that about deer. So that's interesting.
Yeah, you can Google it. There's videos. It's very bizarre. It's like it gives you the same sort of feeling like that, like watching like a a pelican swallow like an ever smaller bird does. It's like you wouldn't think that they would do that, and now that you've seen it, like
you're like, oh, yeah, I got you. I was gonna say like its tragic backstory is that like it was born like underdeveloped, kind of like we said, and then its mother like went on a rampage and like started killing other things and bringing it to it, and like those things just happened to be like the antlers of other deer and stuff, and so it would like, I don't know, get all trapped. It's unnecessary to add that on.
What is that one character from I don't remember their name, but like I've been doing a lot of God of War recently, but there's a character from Norse mythology that had like this protection, and it was because his mother went around and made everything promise not to hurt him. And I can't remember the story. Like his name is escaping me, his mother's name is escaping me, but the entire thing is that she gets promises from everything except for mistletoe, and her son is eventually killed through mistletoe. And when I was thinking with that, it's like, oh, like she goes around to all of the other, like the story what you're saying, like she goes around to all the other horned animals and like collects their horns, like you said, like goes on this rampage and just constructs this like Bubble Boy style enclosure around her son. Because that could work.
It looks like this might be the Norse god Baldur.
Yeah, Baldur. There we go.
Here, which is really funny because I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate lately.
So have I.
It's so good.
It is.
I didn't
really
anticipate
good.
it being that good.
I didn't either. It's making me a better D&D player, which I was not expecting.
Me either. I'm like, I've come up with entire speeches for this next session.
I've been playing a bard, and like I've been in and out of like the D&D community. Like I haven't really been able to like get a group together until I moved to Athens. But like I'm playing a bard to better understand like how that character works, and like, oh my god, like it has been so much fun. I've been working my way through it. Who's your favorite so far?
Yeah.
Of the
only ones
characters?
that of like the party members?
Yeah, of your little posse so far.
Okay, let me take a look really quick. I want to make sure I'm spelling it correctly. What's the
Everybody on my dash is super horny for Asterion.
Okay,
I don't know.
That's me too.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Well, I mean, in all fairness, you probably are also on my dash, but like, yeah, everybody is for him. I love Gale. Like from the moment that I met him and pulled him out, like he is phenomenal.
I love him too. There are times, and I feel like a lot of folks in the LGBT community like go through this, especially if you're bisexual like me, where you're just like, I don't know if I'm really like, bisexual or anything. And then I ran into like Asterion, and I'm like, no, I am. Or like, I love that. I don't know how far you are in the game, but there's like, have you met the devil yet?
I have not.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but when you meet the devil, Wood is what I'm going to say.
I'm excited for that. Then given what you've said about Asterion, I'm excited for whatever in store for me with that.
I don't even know if it's like anything about Asterian's character necessarily. Like, I think that rogues are cool and everything, but I think it's the fact that his voice sounds like if David Bowie had a love child with Tim Curry. That's what I think the appeal to me is like, this guy is so blatantly like, yeah. So
he's very much himself in a way, for better or for worse, regardless of whatever situation is. He's always Asterian. And like,
yes.
I feel like Gale is the same way, just a little like more slippery. But like I was streaming it, and we were talking about Asterian, and I'm like, one of my viewers didn't realize that he has the little marks on his neck, like the little bite marks. And I was just like,
I didn't notice that either.
Oh, you didn't? Oh my god. Okay, no. So now you'll never unsee it. But I was like, yeah, you know what? Even if he didn't have those, he'd probably get those tattooed on. I feel like that's a fair way to describe him.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. You are totally correct. Yeah, there's... how far have you made it in the game, out of curiosity?
So I've gotten to like the point where like I have found... what can I get away with? Well, you're farther along than me, so it doesn't really matter. I have found the village of tieflings, and I've just exited it. And there's like a little forest area, and I won the perception check on one of my playthroughs, and it turned into a swamp with red caps in it, and that's where I've been stuck.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, weird. Like, everybody's saying, like, this game is fucking huge, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make my way through it.
Yeah. No, like that's what I've noticed as well, is that there's people posting pictures of themselves in the Underdark, and I'm like, this is so like beautiful and like so dark and just amazingly like pretty for a game that like maybe doesn't have so much right to be, but it's like such stunning like viewscapes and stuff like that. I think I was on the verge of going in that direction. Have you met up with Auntie Ethel outside of town yet?
Yes, actually, that's probably I got my ass handed to me by her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had my suspicions because she is very she's very sketchy, just like from the outset. And, like, when I found that one tiefling with her legs that were fucked up from the potion, I was just like, this is Auntie Ethel's fault. And I don't know how true that is, but, like, I did follow that to its natural conclusion, where we found the one woman trapped inside her little hut. And then she turned into whatever the fuck she is and killed me, like, soundly. I'm having issues getting through the combat encounters. I feel like I'm underleveled, but I don't know where to grind, or if this game involves grinding. It's a skill issue.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either. I think that a lot of it is like, you know, contingent on like you having enough levels and stuff like that. But like, I just went to the place where I chose to free the goblin that they had in the prison. So I went to their camp. Yeah, I went to their camp and like hung out with them for a while. And on the way, like, to the camp, I was like, I'm going to take this little detour over here. I go to the little detour over there. There's Auntie Ethel hanging out with these two guys who are like, give us back our sister. And like, we have this whole conversation. I'm just like, what did you do to her sister? She's like, I can't believe you don't believe me. And then like flies into a rage and then poof, out of existence.
You were supposed to defend me.
Yeah, because when I went in there, I was like, oh no, I'm definitely going to soak up all of this Irish accent, like 11 on me granny stuff. Like,
so like, I forgot that's how I got there. But I also did the goblin thing. I just didn't let her out because I couldn't figure out how. So I just was like, okay, sure, I'll free you. Yeah. And then I walked away. But like, I got to the goblin part, and I was actually, as a Asterian, I snuck into the back, and I was just like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll let you tattoo me. I have no respect for this temple anyway. And I let what's her name tattoo me, and then she like inescapably, Gut. Princess Gut, or whatever her name is. I let her tattoo me, and no matter what I did, she always tried to kill me. And that's around the point where I'm at. I'm either stuck on that dead end, or I'm stuck on the other dead end.
Okay, I'm going to tell you as somebody who's played through that part multiple times, I don't think there's a way to prevent her from like putting you to sleep. So I think that's just universal. Yeah. So I kind of had the same thing happen to me. But that's kind of the direction I went in. If you keep going that direction, have you found the thing where, have you talked to the guy from when you first enter the grove? When you, what's the word I'm looking for here? When you fought off the goblins? Like when you were going into the grove?
Are you talking about the village, like the Blighted Village? Or anywhere around there?
Yeah, where they have like all the druids and the tieflings and stuff like that, and they're in conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like talking about, well, we can't put up the gate yet, and like that kind of thing. So if you go and talk to that dude, like off, like when you're just like in the village, he'll tell you about how he and his friends have been like basically got lost trying to find this artifact or whatever. And it's if you pursue that quest when you're in the goblin section, you will find some really interesting things, and that's how you meet the devil.
That's great.
Yeah, so not to go too deep into it, but if you want to find the guy whose like voice is like really, really Rogers my Hammerstein, so to speak, definitely go check him out.
I am going to have to. I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah. Where were we? Oh, making monsters.
Yeah.
I feel like we've made several already, just by going off on this tangent. Have you ever heard of the Baphomet moth before?
The Baphomet moth?
Yeah, the Baphomet moth.
Is that the one? Is that the common the one iconography that I see quite a bit with the moth with the skull outline? Or am I thinking something else?
I think that's the Death's Head moth. The Baphomet moth is a very real thing. I'm sending you a picture right now. By day, I'm sending them in reverse order because of course I am. By night, it looks like this thing I'm sending you right now. And by day, it looks like just a regular old moth. Oh, I guess the regular old moth got there first. Never mind.
What the
So that's
fuck?
what... Yeah. So this is actually what it looks like when it's kind of in mating season.
Incredible.
And those are, those are, for reproduction essentially, or for
So it's just
maybe
flying
attracting a
around,
mate.
swinging around its four enormous dongs. Like that's what.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah.
It looks like a clam. Like it looks like a clam from hell. Like the little feelers alone. Gosh.
Yeah, I know, like those little, I don't want to say they're articular hairs because I don't know if they're like stingy or anything like that, but like it's a weird little guy,
Yeah, it
But
sure is.
if you just saw, so by day it kind of looks like a normal moth, but like by night essentially it looks like something out of a horror novel, something that might go after you, so to speak. Like especially if you have like a big old like group of these coming after you, that could be traumatic.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. I have to see this thing in motion. Please continue, but like I'm.
Oh yeah.
So does it have like control over the little feelers?
They like move around, yeah, like little tentacles. It's really weird. I think that they're like, it's like a feather to a peacock, not necessarily like it's
Oh my
not
god, they
necessarily
retract.
its genitals. Yeah.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you again. Wow.
Also, not that pretty, like relatively small, but like if you saw those, like if I just saw that walking around, I'd be like, what what did I just walk into?
Yeah, that's what gets me. Is that like you had like the moth part is so innocuous, but like the tentacles visually are very upsetting. Like they don't like it looks like a parasite that has infested like a normal moth, less so than the moth just has like an extra bit that's weird.
Yeah, apparently it's a cormata is what it's called, which just like it secretes pheromones. And it's used in like courtship rituals. It's not necessarily its genitalia, but it does excrete pheromones, is what I understand. And it's supposed to serve as both aphrodisiacs and tranquilizers. So there's that. Nature is horrifying.
That's an interesting combo.
Yeah, like I'd be terrified by that if I was a little bug. But then again, I'm not a little bug. So
from the perspective of a bug, like that must be so weird too. Like it's just like this moth and it's flailing around these tentacles and like releasing like, because we wouldn't be able to detect it, but the bug would. Like there's this mist of like rainforest cafe, fucking spritzer style like.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, like these feel good chemicals. Like it's just a walking party.
You know the party is about to pop off when the old Baphomet moth shows up.
Yeah.
Now I'm just gonna see it like that forever. It's just a guy with a bunch of drinks.
Yeah, like it's like you scale it up and it's just like emitting like a constant mist of like vodka and like mixers, which would be horrifically sticky. But
so what I'm saying is, let's make this the basis for our next monster, which is something that's maybe not intimidating at first glance, but downright demonic when seen at exactly the right time. Which I kind of like the idea of like something that spritzes out like things that would be intoxicating to people, maybe from something like these almost tentacles. I forget what I called them now. From these like cormata kind of things, but like if you attach it to, I don't know if a person, but like something else.
The concept of
what do you think?
Like human beings being affected by like pheromones and stuff are really interesting because as far as I'm aware, there's been no like scientific consensus of like, oh, human beings are attracted by pheromones or like like there's like all those things of like, oh, spritz on this perfume and you'll like get ladies instantly. Like there's no scientific basis for that.
Right. It's all marketing.
Yeah. But pheromones do exist and we are affected by them, just not in the way that like a bug would be affected by this. But it'd be really cool if we were like, and like it would be interesting to think about how that would work in a person. Like, does it just like, is it a conscious compulsion? Is it like when you smell something like I love the smell of tomatoes. Like, I don't know why it just like really gets me. Like whenever it like hits me, like I just stop for a moment and I'm just like, oh my God, that smells really good. But like, I'm consciously aware that like I am smelling tomatoes and like I can make the choice of being like, oh, I want to go shove my entire face into this tomato plant, which I normally do. Yeah. But like, I can make that choice. Like, is this like a thing? Do you think we should go for more of like a thing where it's not a conscious like you're not consciously being affected by the pheromones, or do you think it'd be something where it's like oh, like it releases this thing and human beings know that it's affecting them this way, but they might want to seek it out anyway because it's fun?
Oh, that's a good question, because you could create an entire like illicit drug scene around something like this, you know?
Yeah.
If it was like consciously figured out. I mean, even if it was subtle.
Like, I'm picturing, like, what if, like, you were the guy who, like, throws a party for, like, you and the rest of, like, your sketchy friends, and, like, instead of, like, being the guy that has, like, the overpriced macaw on his shoulder that he probably shouldn't have, you have, like, one of these things, and it just releases, like, this weird pheromone that, like, makes everybody feel a little calmer and great, and, like, who knows what else it could be doing to you, but, like, hey, you know... Like, it's different. Like, I'm picturing, like, almost like an exotic pet.
Oh, like an exotic pet. Oh. Okay. I kind of like this. So then we would be... So maybe in order for it to... So in that case, I think that we would want it to be more like on a level where you know that you're being affected by it. Or if you don't, like, it's still obvious enough to people. Like, people would know that they can do that, maybe. Maybe if you're not as experienced, like, with it, or, like, you don't know that this thing exists, like, you're being affected by it and you don't know why. But, like, there's still, like, people who are in the know, like, that it has this effect on people.
Yeah. Like, part of the reason, like, this makes me think of that is back where I'm from Florida, we have a huge issue with the exotic pet trade. And a lot of my childhood I grew up adjacent to people who worked with exotics. Went over to my friend's house and, like, got to hear his mother tell the story of how she found an alligator in her laundry room because he was doing some work with, like, a local production company and they needed alligators for that. Like, it's wild, like, what you'll see people just, like, have in their homes. So, like, the concept of, like, this little creature that produces, like, this feel-good chemical being, like, in, like, a cool, like, in somebody's, like, cage in their living room somewhere, or, like, being, like, toted around at a party would be interesting to me.
Yeah, so, like, if it's in a cage or, like, kept on somebody's shoulder, like you said with, like, the macaw kind of example, I think that would be really a fascinating, like, a jumping off point there. So do you think that it would be something smaller then, I guess, not necessarily like a big, like it's on the scale of, like, mastiff to pet squirrel or pet rat or what have you? How big do you think it would be? Because in my mind, I'm picturing, like, a Furby.
I like where you're going with that. Have you... this is a question for you specifically. Have you ever heard of, like, furby culture?
I'm gonna say no, but I have a vague idea what you're hinting at, I think. But
so, like, have you seen the long Furbies?
I do believe I have seen the long Furbies. I have seen some very interesting and terrifying modifications made to Furbies over the years.
Okay, cool. So we were on the same page. I like you bringing up, like, the Furby, because I want to bring a Furby vibe to this. Like, I want it to be cute, and I want it to be, like, mildly unsettling, but not like a threatening way.
Yes.
Just like in the way that Furbies are unsettling.
Yes, indeed, cute but unsettling. We're making a little bit of everything for everybody here. Yes, cute and unsettling sounds good. Furbies, long Furbies. Let me just double check here really quick. That is not how you spell long. There we go. Okay, yes. No, I have seen these before. They are mildly terrifying. Very cool at the same time. I don't know what's quite going on in this photo, but that's okay. I'm sure that they're having fun, and that's the important part.
There's a creator I knew back in Florida who made a forb, which was a Furby orb. Yeah, that's the vibe.
Oh, I gotcha.
I like it. You know, I had, like, a Furby once, but, like, oh yeah, there we go. It's ASMR Furby surgery.
Okay, that's
Here's the name of the video. And, like, it's very interesting to see what I love how, like, I am, like, describing my aspect of Furby culture to you, which is very much its own thing, and you were showing me Furbies that I have never conceptualized at all. Like, your Furbies that are showing me are more, like, humanoid, like, they have, like, leaning more toward, like, the no face style thing element of it, where, like, the Furby's face is the no face, but, like, otherwise the body's featureless. Like, my Furbies, my horrors that I'm familiar with are like when they take like the Furby body and like mutilate it in like specific ways. So like you see like people like skinning them, and like there's like this weird like element where it's not a real animal, obviously, but like it is constructed much like a real animal. That's my experience with Furby horror culture. But like I like what you're bringing to the table. Like this is broadening my horizons. I like the duck feet on that one.
That's pretty wild. I'm going to skip ahead like in this. Yeah, because ASMR is a little bit like, I don't know, man. Like it doesn't really do anything for me. But
no, you don't have to. You trust me. Like it's not for the ASMR. It's for the Furby butchering experience.
I see. Wow. That is really turning into something incredible, frankly. But yeah, all the ones I've seen have been like kind of like this guy, where it's kind of like the thing that you would maybe put underneath your door to prevent or on your door to prevent smoke from coming in.
Oh yeah.
But also also that, you know?
I like that. Like, yeah, I like yours like seeming like they're using like the face as like the foundation and then building upon it in like a different way where like it's like entirely new parts. And I think that's really cool. Like I love how like you can distinctly recognize it as a Furby just by the eyes and mouth alone and the general sort of like gumdrop shape to it.
Yeah, because like it really is like such a like ubiquitous thing. Like, oh wow, I'm just getting to the end of this video and that is unsettling.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, no, I think it looks really cool. Like it's a cool thing to kind of, I don't know why like this meme of all things popped off the way that it did, but like,
well, I think it's kind of like Garfield culture. Like, are you familiar with like people, I guess I'm going to say cryptifying Garfield, like making him into like this like otherworldly creature.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. It's
I've been subscribed to Quentin Reviews.
It's like that. Like almost everybody of a certain demographic has like these cultural touchstones, and like I think because we have that shared commonality, when people like riff on that, it touches us in a different way, like in a nostalgic, like it hits in like the childhood sort of feels.
Yeah, like it evokes something. I think it's the same reason why films like Skinamarink maybe like took off, is because it brings you back to a time when you didn't know quite as much about the world. Everything was kind of innocent and you weren't maybe as familiar with like consumer culture or anything of that nature. And it just kind of, you were also more vulnerable. You were easier to scare, like kind of thing. Like if you saw a Furby in a dark closet and you just saw the eyes and the mouth, you wouldn't necessarily know that that's the Furby and not whatever monstrosity these really creative folks come up with.
Yeah,
I don't
like
know
that.
where I'm going with this.
No, I like that because like it, like when I think about like that nostalgia, it's like those are the first monsters that we make as children. Like we come up based on like our experiences and like not having the full picture because we're children. Like, and we only understand a fraction of the things that we experience at that age. Like we have to put together meaning for the experiences that we have in our brains, and in that gap between like reality and like what we understand as children, we make monsters, like the monster in your closet, or like, like, oh, I saw this folded up jacket on the side of the road. What if it was a body? Like kind of like things that like little kids think of. But like when they start understanding like the concept of monsters and like the things and the unknowns being scary. Like it's a very particular like age that I'm evoking that for me was like the 90s, like for like stuff with like Furby and Garfield and whatnot, like the Garfield horror.
Right, because there was that one book that came out that was like featured Garfield like as a horrific like character or something like that, and I think that kind of set people in motion with that whole thing. And maybe it would have eventually evolved that way anyway, because we have a way of turning things, like you said, from our childhood just into monstrosities, into some kind of terrifying, like, aspect of, some sort of distortion of what it was originally intended to be. Yeah, that's all I got about that, actually. I wasn't going to follow that up with anything, I don't think, or if I was, I lost the train of thought, because yay, ADD.
Touching on like our monster design and what we've been thinking of, like what if we made this, like, I know we were like thinking of like the like drug scenes and that kind of stuff, and like, yeah, like there's that aspect of it that we could go with the pheromones, but like what if these were like exotic pets that you give to help pacify children? Like, what if we go that route with, like, the horror aspect of it? Where it's, like, normalized, kind of. Like, oh, this, like, little monster that you get to calm your precocious, like, middle schooler down or whatever. It's their babysitter.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that it's a timeless kind of thing, because parents all kind of struggle with keeping their children appeased and like pacified and all that kind of stuff. And, while nowadays we might focus more on like, screen time, not to sound like, too boomerish or anything like that, but you give a kid like a screen and they're set for however long, because all of their shows are on there. Back in my day, again, uphill both ways in the snow, we used to, we were kind of, the main criticism was we were sitting in front of TVs too much, which I could totally see this like exotic pet being a thing, like back in the days when people were saying, you read too much, you should get your head out of those books, but also it could be adapted to a modern thing where, we have the issue with screen time, so to speak.
Like the idea,
I think it's really
I get what you're saying with that. Yeah,
I just think it's a timeless concept.
Yeah, the real question is though, like, how do we make that work? Because we have like the Baphomet Moth, like the image that we're invocating, or the our jumping off point, and like the Baphomet Moth is horrifying. Like the little tendrils are like viscerally upsetting. And, like, we could go that route with this. Like, where we have, like, the concept of, like, oh, this is just a cute little, like, pet. And then it becomes not so cute anymore.
Yeah.
But...
So...
Go on, yeah.
So what if you... I imagine you've seen Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Yes. It's kind of a touchstone for folks of our generation, I would say. Especially the scene where Newman gets eaten by whatever kind of dinosaur that is, what has like the flaps, that come out of the side of its head.
Yeah.
I want to say it's like the Dilophosaurus or something.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Dinosaur folks, sound off in the comments. But yeah, if it had something like that, but it's much more innocuous, almost. Like it functions the same way as the Baphomet Moth, where it emits these sensations, these pheromones, what have you, that would hypnotize most people. But it looks like just... I don't want to say... It kind of looks like... when you go to the Chinese New Year kind of things, they have the dragons or the lions or what have you, and they have like those big like pom-pom kind of things on the outside.
Are you thinking like food dogs? Like the big goofy...
I think so.
Because I love those.
Let me see. Let me take a look. Yes, I think so. But they've got like these big like pom-pom kind of things that like people like will wave around and stuff to like kind of give it that kind of affect. Like making it look like big and fluffy and what have you. What if that, but the interior was more like kind of like a bat swing, you know,
like a leathery sort of like a flat like skin.
Yeah, and it just radiates out, maybe like comes out from like behind its ears, and like kind of sways in a gentle motion that, like, you know, most kids probably wouldn't find that upsetting, but if you were maybe not so innocent, you'd be like, what the hell is that thing, you know?
Have you seen that episode of Doctor Who where they had the last surviving human being and she was just a plate of skin?
Yes, Cassandra?
Yeah, Cassandra. Like, that's what I'm picturing, like that sort of like texture.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of as well. But maybe it doesn't like just look fleshy. Maybe it's like fleshy with some like marks on it, you know, like something that would be non-threatening.
Yeah.
Maybe even something that they do to like mutilate the thing, like if they were to mass market them, kind of like maybe spray paint on like a smiley face.
I was thinking about it, like as you were suggesting it. I was thinking, are you familiar with like the practice of like tattooing fish?
No, I've never heard of that before.
So when you go to the pet store, they have like those displays of glowfish, and like those are a different thing. Those are like when you have fish that produce genes that jellyfish normally have and produce their own phosphorescent light. However, there is an exotic pet trade practice in which people tattoo designs onto like larger fish. I believe like gouramis and goldfish in particular. So like it'll have like a smiley face or like or whatever on it, like something to look cool. Oh. And the idea is like, oh, you have this cool tattooed fish now. And I was thinking, like, if you just have like this plain thing of skin, it's wild to look at. I'm glad it's not commonly done anymore, but it used to be a thing where you could like just go to the pet store and get one.
Wow.
Let me see. But I was thinking, like, you have all of this available retail space, and I don't know if you were aware of this, but there was a point in which it was not trendy, but it was like a thing that people were talking about on social media, like tattooing their Siamese cats.
I didn't see. I was not that. No, I've never seen that.
Yeah, not Siamese. What's the one where they don't have fur? Like they're just like completely Sphinx cats.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have like all that bare skin, and people were like, one or two people went viral for like tattooing their cat, and like that's kind of the vibe.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Wow. No, yeah, I could totally see them like doing that kind of thing though, especially when it comes to something that might otherwise be as upsetting as this creature. You know, because people will do anything for $1, you know. Wow. That's horrifying.
Yeah. Animal body modification is just like one of those things where it's like you want to believe people are inherently good, but that's like one of those things where it's like just one of the evil. They? Yeah, it's like you want a concrete example of like human evil. It's like the idea of like modifying, which I guess like would be in line with the sort of person that would get like an exotic pet to pacify their own kid. It's like, oh yeah, you can tattoo it to make it look cute.
Yeah. So not to throw back to like my time as a FedEx driver again, but when I was a FedEx driver, we used to deliver to this one guy's house, and he had these dogs, like these little tiny dogs that he would like breed. But what they would do is they would surgically remove their voice box so they couldn't bark. And I was like, what the hell? This has got to be illegal or something.
I forgot about that.
Apparently that's a thing. I'm just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, if you don't want a small dog that yaps, don't get a small dog. They're gonna yap. Well, so we drop off like a package, and like we just hear like these like really faint like barking, like would-be barks, but we're not, you know, because wild. because they couldn't do it. I've
heard of it, but I've never heard like what that would sound like. I just assumed nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of like just like I guess it would be like forceful breathing almost. Like
Oh,
there was no like.
Oh, that's
yeah.
horrifying.
There's no like just imagine like if somebody's like if you've ever heard like somebody like feigning like a gasping death on a show or something like that. It's kind of like that. It's just like a gasp, like like that kind of thing. Like instead of. Sorry for the people wearing headphones, by the way, and you for having to hear that. But like that's just kind of what it sounds like. There's no form, there's no sound to it. It's just like it sounds like they're just having a like hard time breathing, but they're trying to like bark. But yeah, I completely understand what you mean. Like there's definitely a proclivity for some folks to do like tail docking or ear docking or like a tattooing fish. Apparently, I didn't know was a thing. Like, yeah, there's a like you said, you want to believe people are good, but there are some folks who are just I can't wrap my mind around like doing that and charging money for it too. Like, just atrocious.
One of the qualities of human beings that like maybe like in general we should acknowledge more or that kind of thing is that like we have the idea of like if we can control or like dominate something as a species, people will try to do it. Like if we are capable of like controlling something or pushing something to its absolute limits, we will find a way to do it. Like,
yeah,
even when we look at like the breeds that we domesticate, like we have pushed like several breeds to like their absolute limits as to like how far we are willing to modify their bodies for just like selective breeding, to the point where like a lot of them can't sustainably reproduce by themselves. So like I guess like I think this is like a really cool concept because it's like it's a monster that like maybe like it is not so much modified for like our attempts to like control it like genetically or like through breeding or whatever. It's just like we're modifying it and controlling what it already produces to our own gain.
Yeah, I think that's the real monster in this monster is humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I haven't done one of those yet either. Yeah, no, I think that the real feature on this one is the cruelty, like, towards it, because I feel like out in the wild, this thing might not behave the way that it does, although it is kept in a cage in theory. So maybe it would. I'm not sure. Do we think that this is something that's? Oh, go ahead.
Well, there's plenty of like evolutionarily, like if we're going to view it for like the perspective of like this is a creature produced by its environment what it does is serves a purpose. Like if we view it through like that lens, like there's a lot of reasons why producing a chemical that would calm down or like soothe something would be beneficial for a creature like this. Like it could be in a symbiotic relationship with like a larger animal that it keeps docile when it's around, but it serves to protect it. Is it a defense against predators where it's like, okay, like you're in my vicinity and now I'm releasing this and you don't want to eat me because if you eat me it stops. Like there's plenty of different reasons why a creature like this that would evolve to exist. However, humans being the way that they are, we would push that to the limit. Like we would be like, okay, like this creature produces this. Let's see how much we can push it to produce more of the thing we want out of it.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense for this guy. Do you think? I mean, I like the concept of it, like living in some kind of like, like maybe the lair of a bear or something, to go back to bears because that's the biggest, scariest thing I could think of.
Maybe that's valid,
offhand anyway. Or like in a lion's den or something like that, and like it's kept around not only to keep those creatures like calm, but maybe to sedate prey as well. Maybe there's like a weight limit on like how much of an effect it would have on you.
Like it's like it's got like like it's very adaptive.
Yeah, because like if it's a small child, I could see it being used not only to like sate like when it's being fussy or whatever, but to like put it to sleep when it's not, being cooperative. It's not ready to go down for nap time.
Like the old practice of like giving your kid just a little bit of alcohol before they go to bed.
Oh, just put some whiskey in their gums. They'll be fine.
I like that. I like the idea of it being. I think the adaptation thing is important to mention because like the most successful creatures that have lived alongside humans have been adaptable, and if like this is a thing that, as you said, like latches on to creatures that are stronger than it anyway in this like symbiotic thing, having the ability to use its like pacifying thing for multiple purposes would make sense.
So you said symbiotic relationship, it latches on to other things. Do we think that's like a literal latches on? Do we think that it like its sustenance depends on something like something intangible like the spirit, or something like something that is tangible like blood, or some kind of like marrow, or something to that effect, like something organic that it would eat?
What if it can't produce its own heat?
Can't produce its own heat. That's a really interesting idea.
Like, what if the majority of its metabolic energy from eating prey or what have you goes toward the production of these pheromones, or like this sort of like environmental pacification, and it doesn't really go toward maintaining the body? Like, that's the sacrifice it pays, like, for its environment to be able to do that. So, like, it's dependent on a much larger creature to survive and, like, reproduce and, like, be safe and have its young because it can't produce its own warp. But at the same time, it has this ability that makes up for that.
Yeah. Because if you keep it close, then you'll be happier or feel these positive feelings, more frequently. So it's more likely that you're going to keep it around. Plus, on top of that, it's kind of cute, but also maybe not that cute. Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. And then, like, if you decided that you don't want to hold on to it, you could, I don't know, pass it off to your other pet or whatever, and it would, like, serve as maybe a perch for this thing. Because I imagine that there would be such a market. Or, like, I don't know, maybe you could, like, I don't know how you would do that. But, like, I feel like there would be, like, also a market for people that are like, I don't want to like hold this thing on my shoulder all the time. Like, I just kind of want it to be there to like spread out the good feeling, stuff. I'm getting too in the weeds on this. I like the idea of it just hanging on somebody's shoulder and just like emitting these pheromones that make people feel good. And because it's so close to its host, it makes that person feel so good that it doesn't want to ever like leave it. Maybe it creates like an addictive quality in the host.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when you get started, like, as a child, and you grow up with it, like, then you kind of always want to have one around. So there's always, like, a demand for it as well.
There is a Japanese artist that was on Tumblr that I saw do, like, a very interesting style of, like animal creature. And it wasn't, like, a particular cryptid. It was just inspired by, like, different sort of cryptids. From a variety of movies, and like one of them was like this bat, and it sort of like swung over onto its keeper, like it had these big leathery wings, and it just sort of like draped it on things. And that's kind of how I'm picturing it, just like being on a person, just kind of like how bats would, more so than how like a bird would.
So like its wings, for lack of a better term, are like wrapped around the person. Maybe like you can use it almost as a fashion accessory, like it would be almost like a backpack, I guess.
Yeah, like the way that bats lay when they're on a surface is much different from how like a bird would perch, because like a bird has like legs and structure for that. A bat really doesn't. It just kind of clings. So it's more of like an additional layer of like clothing, or like I like in my mind, like I almost like visually see it as like a patch. Like you would have this sort of thing like tucked into like your jacket or something.
Oh yeah, because then you can hide it, and
yeah.
Okay, I kind of like that idea. So it's like a little patch, and you mean like the nicotine patch, right? You just slap it right on your skin, and it would like curl around it.
Yeah, like kind of like those big, you know, like those heat patches that you can get for like sore muscles that just sort of like slap onto you. Like I'm picturing that sort of thing. Like it's dependent on like having that body contact with you. Because like at some level, like that's like really unsettling. Could you imagine like somebody opening up their jacket and then just like the face of like this Furby, like?
Oh God, yeah, that would. Whoa. Just like peeking out, you'd be like, "Hey, what's up? I'm just over here keeping people warm." You know.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like seeing somebody like reach into their jacket and pull out an animal. Like I'm not recommending people do this, but like it is definitely like unsettling. Like the first time I've ever seen somebody like reach into their coat and like pull out a ball python, I'm like, that was in there the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Or like, hey, here's a mouse. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
So we got a tragic backstory, sort of, kind of. We got like what it looks like. We got how it could live out in the wild. Is there like, since it needs to generate body heat, do you think it stays in like regions where it's maybe more like temporally like not cold, basically, like it stays out colder areas, maybe stays more towards like equatorial regions or like whatever the United States is. I can't remember what the heck it's called in terms of climate.
Yeah,
like temperate zones, I think.
So, like, circling back to exotic pet trades in Florida again, the reason why the exotic pet trade is bad in Florida in particular is because we are I believe it's called a subtropical zone, but our temperature range doesn't go like beyond like a certain bracket, and that bracket is where most exotics that you think of, like snakes and like reptiles, like stuff from other countries, that's typically the bracket in which those creatures are most comfortable. Well, you get news stories where like we'll get a cold snap and iguanas will fall dead out of trees, but it happens so rarely that it never really kills them all off. And that's kind of picturing for this guy.
Sure. So, like, in a warmer area, typically, if a cold snap happens, they could be in danger. But since it's not very common, then, yeah, they're typically pretty safe. I like that. Okay.
I like the idea of, like, if you were on a trip up to, like, say, like, New York, for example, and you brought it with you and it escaped, it probably is not going to survive the winter.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, it might now, but, like, typically, no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying we haven't seen snow very often, but when we do, oh boy, it's bad. Climate change.
It's wild. I got to see snow for the first time, like, last year, I believe. And it's
really?
Yeah. Because I've traveled up out of the East Coast, but, like, I haven't really been, like, out of the state during winter. And it was an experience.
I can imagine. I mean, especially if you're still like, I guess if you're not prepared for like that kind of thing, because I have friends from down south who are like, yeah, if there's an inch of snow, like it's donezo, you know, they got to shut down the whole state essentially. And, you know, there's a lot of people up here who are like, that's ridiculous. I drive to work in like 6 feet of snow. But it's like, yeah, well, they don't have the infrastructure for it down there.
Yeah.
So maybe be a little more sympathetic, you know?
I feel that.
But yeah, I can imagine it's got to be like, I would imagine down like in the South, it's got to be concerning when you see that kind of stuff like start to happen, and especially if it's more frequent. Kind of thing. So we've established that it's going to live in a subtropical zone. People can keep it like in their pockets, like bring it out and like just, I guess, slap it on their bare skin or just like keep it close to them at all times. And it will like, if we go along with the theory that I had, where it has like kind of those leathery flaps that people can tattoo and like pom-poms on the end of them that kind of emit these pheromones and stuff like that's how it makes people feel good. What else do we think? Can it says, so we put that like it's capable of like overdosing like victims of like big like predators that it would rely on, or just, you know, because of children being like so small, like it would, you know, put them to sleep, but it might not have that effect on most like adults or things like that. Do we think that it has free will? Like, can it change how much it emits at a time?
Oh, I like that concept because like there's a lot of like exotic pets that are physically modified in ways to like prevent them. Like I'm thinking skunks off the top of my head.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of ethical questions concerning that. I think the easiest example to give most people would be the practice of like declawing cats.
Yeah.
And most people agree that like declawing cats is a bad thing because you're physically altering the cat's body in a way that makes it harder for it to walk around and it can't defend itself. But a cat has free will in the way that you're constructing free will in this instance. Like it can choose to unleash its claws to scratch something or, you know, or whatever. Like it can decide to do that. And it has control over that.
Yeah.
That being the case, I think it would be interesting if, like, it did have, like, control over it to, like, a degree. Like, where you'd have to, like, train it. Where, like, the concept of, like, oh, hey, it released too much. Like, this is a bad one. Like, would be an ethical question.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Because I can now picture this thing, like, I don't know. Again, because like attitude is such a subjective thing. Like we were talking about pit bulls and stuff like that earlier. Like what really is a bad like dog? You know, when you really think about it, what would be a bad creature like this? And I think that if it did secrete like over secreted or something like that and like caused overdoses or anything, that would be considered like a bad whatever this thing's called, and you know, by humanity anyway. Where was I going with this? I don't know.
I like the concept though, like the idea of like, oh hey, like maybe it got spooked and in self-defense released a bunch of these chemicals, and like for something that's adapted to live symbiotically with bears, like the amount that it's producing wouldn't have killed a bear, but like it sent a child to the hospital. Like that kind of stuff. Like I get where you're going with that. And that's,
so like if you tug on its ears too much, like it lashes out instead of like by biting you, it emits more of the toxin, which I guess then would also result in people like abusing them for the illicit drug trade kind of situation that we kind of talked about.
So that being said, do you want it to basically be like otherwise like I don't want to, you know what, I'll just say it. Like, do you want it to be like otherwise like cute and like marketable looking outside, like not really have a way of defending itself outside of the secretion? Because if you go that route too, like, and just make it so that's like entirely reliant on that, like we were talking about surgical modification earlier and like, you know, like removing things, it's like you could degland this thing, you could essentially take away its only form of defense, and that could be another avenue that people could explore.
That's true too. That's an interesting idea and an interesting question, because I think when I picture this, I think it's like marketable kind of a thing. You know, you want it to be pretty and stuff, but maybe in the wild it's not as pretty. Maybe it has fangs as well. You know, like beta fish. Yeah. Like maybe it's more acclimated to hunting by poisoning, you know, like if something gets too close to it and it's like going to eat it anyway, it's like going to fight back, or like maybe it preys on like little bugs or something. But then you, like you said, degland it or maybe defang it even. And while it's not necessarily making it less ambulatory, it makes it more dependent on its host for like sustenance. So I kind of like that idea.
We've created this little creature, and you can do so many horrors to it. Like, like
this
that
poor
seems to be like
guy.
the theme around this one. Yeah, we've created this little guy, and like you can cause so many existential crises for the awful things you can put it through.
Yeah, it's just oh man, humanity. You know, why is it a thing? But I think that having a secondary, or even that being its primary method of defense, makes it more interesting for one, but also gives it more of a chance, because I feel like evolutionarily there's probably not that many things that don't have some kind of mechanism that would be like, you know, physically threatening, I guess. Maybe it can use like maybe the little wings that it sprouts out like can also sprout out like little spikes or something, you know, if it gets too mad. It'll just like whack you with them. And they like poison you or something.
like the wild type. Like the wild type has that like something that's mildly like tarantulas. Like how people will have pet tarantulas and the hair will like they'll release their hair as a defense mechanism, and it's a mildly. Yeah. I
made a monster based kind of around that for Monster of the Week, and it's called like the Dream Moth, incidentally. And it has like they're called articular hairs, where they will just like shoot them off basically as like a defense mechanism. They'll get like really hard and like stinky. And if you just like, it'll just use them as weapons basically. So I could totally see that being a thing on this guy. I just also like saying articular hairs, you know.
It's such a good word. I forgot that word exists. Thank you for reminding me of it.
No problem. I didn't realize it was a thing until I made that creature, and I was like, articular hairs. You're running around and it's shooting its articular hairs at you to put you to sleep.
We need more articular hairs in character design.
I agree. Give us more spiky hairs. People don't like to shave, goddammit.
Yeah. Go back to the furs and be like, hey, I took some notes and I think we should have more articular hairs.
That's going to be the poll question when I release this on Spotify now. Should we have more articular hairs? Yes or no?
Yeah. like not as like as people.
Yeah. Should we genetically modify ourselves to just have spikier hairs? You know, why not? And you don't have to wear the leather spiked bracelet. You just shoot them off, off of yourself. Save money, in theory.
We live in the worst version of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Where we get not the web swinging, when we get the articular hairs. Just like
that's great. Do we need to? Do you think we should add anything else to this guy?
I'm picturing. I got like this little poodle-esque creature in my head with like leathery wings and these articular hairs. It's got the little pom-poms. That's what invoked the poodle, by the way.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, like those like canid fox-like face.
I gotcha. That's really interesting. I mean, I think that the real like one thing that we could add on here that we don't have yet is a name for this little guy. Yeah. So.
Ooh, that's rough. It's hard to top Baphomet Moth.
It really is. That's really true. Really? And we can't call it a Furby because that's already a thing. And as much as I love meeting with, new and interesting people, I don't want to make the executives at Mattel angry. So...
Hey y'all, we have come back. We have made the new Furby. We have made Furby 2. It's better. It secretes drugs.
Yeah.
You just like pull this thing out of your jacket.
It's like a Furby, but drugs.
Yeah. Oh.
Do we think it has the third eye that the Furby has, like the motion tracker thing?
I did not know that was a third eye until you brought that to my attention, and now I'll never be able to unsee it. The third eye? I love, the art with the RFID, like the motion tracker thing the remotes use. Yeah, that's a great way to describe that. Yeah, I wanted to have the third eye, but I wanted to detect RFID, I guess.
Okay.
Like the specific ray of infrared light.
Yeah, it's got a really special like third eye where it's like I can scan your groceries. That's another thing that maybe it's used for.
It updates your Amazon shopping list.
Yeah, this is the new thing that Amazon's putting in the store. First of all, okay, I can totally see this being a use for this. You put it in the store, it evokes feelings of like wanting to buy things. Maybe there's like a whole like spectrum of creatures around this to evoke certain like different
It's like
emotions.
a really disgusting bodega cat.
Yeah. It like makes you want to buy more stuff. And also it's got a little eye that checks out the things that you put in your basket, so you can't shoplift. You have to pay full price. No 5-finger discounts.
Look, my first bodega cat that I ever saw was like 17 years old and also mostly hairless. So like I'm getting the image. Like I can see it.
Yeah, like just a Sphinx cat just like hanging out there being like, boop. You bought those Doritos now, buddy.
It's got a tattoo of like the freaking store's branding in case it gets lost.
Oh, yeah, yep. I can see that. Oh no, I hate that I can see this. This means this is the future.
The future.
Yeah, this is the future now. Maybe that's something no. I don't know if that would be a feature that it would have, like the ability to see the future. We're giving it too much credit now. Because I think if it could see the future, it would stop itself from having that happen. From being exploited and stuff. But I was going to say, like, maybe you could call it something like the Cassandra Moth or something, because, like, I think that's the phrase that you use, like something that you can like see into the future. Maybe not even moth, but like the Cassandra.
No, you know what?
Patch.
I think like I get that you might not want to use moth again, but like the concept of it being called like the Cassandra Moth and it being like some weird cat fox like bat thing is interesting to me.
Yeah, because I mean it does have wings and like.
Yeah. Like the concept. I don't want to say like ladybug because like ladybug is like the most common and like generic example of it. But like the things that are named things that aren't those things. Do you? Am I making any sense?
I completely understand what you're talking about. You're talking about like how there's like what do you call it there? Like the tarantula hawk. It's not a hawk. It's just like a big old like bee thing almost. But like it swoops in and like steals tarantulas.
Yeah, like that exact thing, yeah.
Yeah. I kind of like that idea. So, like, yeah, because it's not a moth, like, necessarily, just because it has, like, those fleshy kind of, like, wing-like appendages. It doesn't mean it's, like, capable of flight. It's just kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Something that's been...
I feel like the articular hairs invoke the fuzziness of a moth.
Yeah. And maybe that's on the end of those pom-poms. Like maybe those little like hairs are able to get like rigid and weaponized.
Yeah.
Okay. And did we settle on like how big it was? Because I currently am like between like literal Furby size and like little like heating pad kind of size. Like I just see him as like flat, not really like 3-dimensional, but like I'm not sure.
Well, I've been like the influence the horror Furby concept part has had on me makes me picture like this creature as being like maybe about the size of like a large cat or a small dog. That's a bit of a range because like small dogs can get pretty small, but like I'm picturing like maybe like the size of like a really large cat. Like it wouldn't be bigger than your torso, but it would be big enough.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I can picture that as well. Okay, I like
it needs to, in my mind, it needs to be smuggleable.
Yeah, because it needs to have some kind of like appeal. Again, because it's supposed to be cute. It's supposed to be marketable. You're supposed to want to go out and buy it.
Yeah. I realized that you might have heard snuggleable. I was saying smuggleable, but I agree on both those counts.
Snuggleable and smuggleable.
Like my mind. Yeah, like I'm like, this thing should be cute, and you should also be able to roll this thing up in a newspaper and stick 20 of them into the bottom of a suitcase and like smuggle it across state lines. Like that's what I was picturing in my head. I like your image better.
Nice.
But
I love that idea. That's gonna be the tagline too, like on the streets, is snuggleable and smuggleable. Or at least that's going to be a line that somebody says when they're like describing the creature to like in their role playing game.
Yeah.
All right. So now we got the Cassandra Moth. Is there anything else we need to add to it?
This is a very minor request, but I ask it as a former dog groomer. Can we make it so that you can dye the articular hairs, like you would a poodle?
Yeah, I'd say so. Okay. You know, there's somebody with a janky. As long as we're on the same. You know, there's somebody with a janky Simpsons thing painted on this guy.
You go to your buddy's like big ticket like football game, and he's got one of them in like fucking university colors, just like on his shoulder.
Oh my lord, yeah, of course. And then even if your team's losing, you feel good because the Cassandra Moth is emitting those pheromones. Yeah. Oh no. This thing is just like rife for abuse, which means it's also rife for like redemption later on. Somebody's going to pick their character and be like, I'm going to play as a Cassandra Moth. You're going to play as a what? All right. Well, I think we're good with that guy then. We can move along to the next one. So this one comes courtesy of my friend Lunchbox. And the name that we've got here is Plasticiemo.
I like that. That is not how I would have pronounced that if you showed it to me. Plasticky emo.
Plasticky emo.
Plasticiemo. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we just made a very artificially constructed creature. Not so much because it in of itself was created by people, but because it was molded by it. What if we made something like artificial for this one?
Hell yeah, let's do it. I mean, plastic is right in the name. So I think that's
what got me thinking.
Yeah.
So have you? This was a thing that was. I haven't seen much of it, but it exists. There was a fake social media account that documented this guy's experience discovering a new element, and it would like. He would post videos of it, and it was like this milky fluid, and he was like, this is going to change the state of science itself. And like that account would get into arguments with like other fake accounts that were supposed to be scientists that were like, you weren't supposed to release this information. And him arguing back, it's like, it's my invention. And it was very cute and interesting, especially for me, because I know like nothing about like chemistry or like fluid dynamics. So like you could have shown me like tin and told me that it was like magic space dust, and I would have been like, ooh, fascinating. Like I would have had no context for it. So I love that. So I like the idea of this being like a little artificially created thing, like a liquidy creature, that's like created artificially as like a project of some kind.
I love that idea as well. I don't know if we've had one that's been liquid before. So yeah, I think that sounds really neat. We've had ones that were like slime, but never like particularly like liquid. So it's going to be like a liquidy kind of creature. What do we think what kind of color do we think this liquid has?
What if it was, I'm trying to think of like, my first thought is like how like oil, like how oil from an oil spill will look.
Oh, so like iridescent,
like that unsettling sort of, yeah, like that unnatural sort of like iridescent sheen.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. Oily, iridescent.
Like a soapy sort of texture.
Yeah. So kind of like viscous. Almost, yeah. I think is maybe the word. Maybe not. Do you think that is it like ambulatory, do you think? Like almost kind of like the blob, like it just moves around like.
Yeah, I like that. I like that concept. So when we started thinking of this as a liquid, are you familiar with like Kurt Vonnegut at all? As an author?
So it goes. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so I'm a huge fan of him. And one of my favorite books by him is called Cat's Cradle.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get. I don't know. Are you familiar with the work and like the conceit of it and like the?
I'm going to be honest, and I'm probably going to get my Vonnegut fan card revoked for this. But like, I haven't read Cat's Cradle, so
it's very good.
First one I read was Timequake.
Oh, see, I haven't read Timequake.
Oh.
So I really like Cat's Cradle. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting story about like neurodiversity and like family and like what it means to like have a father who is like maybe not mentally well, and like relationships and stuff. And Vonnegut does an amazing job of just showcasing humanity, as he always does. However, and this is a spoiler, there is a chemical in this story that plays like a very important role. And the issue with it is that if it gets out of control, it can be very, very dangerous. And that's about as much as I'm going to go into it, because you haven't read Cat's Cradle. And you really need to know much more than that for the context of like what I want to bring up here. But like, what if this was like something that was like created like artificially as like a project, but like got out of control? Like it escaped and like became like its own sort of life.
I like that idea. I love a concept of like just something that was created in a lab that just, got out, maybe not even as a lab, like maybe it's just somebody's high school like science project and it just escaped.
Like somebody just came up with this, as some student decided to do a project and it like went awry.
Yeah. Because again, it's a timeless thing. You can put it in like the hands of an apprentice, like at an alchemist's like store or whatever, or like a high school student, or like anything in between.
I like that.
Yeah.
So when we say like this was created by accident, is it? Do we want to go the route of like this was created by accident in the sense of like, oops, I tried to make a volcano and it turned out to be life, or do we want it to be like something where like the act of creation affects the being of the creature? Like this thing was made to clean up oil spills, but it escaped and we discovered that it eats petroleum everywhere, or like it really likes gold fillings and like that's a problem. Like is it a thing where it's like this was created for a purpose and it got outside the control of man and did its own thing, or is it going to be a thing where it's like, oh, this is just an incidental incident? Because I think both routes could be equally interesting.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. With a name like Plasticiemo, I feel like it almost feels like something that somebody would name something affectionately. Not necessarily like something where it's like compound ZYX972 or something like that, which I feel like would be more like the scientific, like if it was mass produced by like a company or something like that it would use something
a little bit more, patent number or whatever.
more sterile than Plasticiemo. So I feel like it was probably the former, where it was like part of a thing that like didn't, or it could even be that it was made like by a high school student, like in an effort to like showcase green energy. Because I feel like that's what a lot of science fairs and stuff like that would probably revolve around. It's just like a basic science kit that like went horribly awry. So I feel like it could really go either way. I think that's more of a fielder's choice question, but the one that I'm picturing would probably be more like a kid making like a thing almost. So, like you've seen the movie Flubber, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So I'm picturing this thing as kind of like being a labor of love and not necessarily something that...
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So I've had something on the back burner as you've been talking, and I want to propose it to you. So like, I have to admit the name Plasticiemo is really cute. And I am thinking like in my head, like one of the questions I had specifically, and this is why the thing that hinges on it. How sentient are we willing to make this weird liquid thing?
Ooh.
Because if it's a labor of love, like a flubber sort of situation, what if we did kind of like a Pinocchio?
Oh.
Where it is liquid, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's sentient. It's its own creature, like almost kind of like the way a jellyfish is a creature, where like it can separate, it can come back together. It's all individually its own life, and together a group, it's life. If that makes any sense. What if because it's a liquid, but at the same time sentient and capable of like complex thought, computation, awareness that it exists. If it's self-aware, it's also going to want to interact with its environment, presumably. What if we made it like a liquid that goes inside of like other things and can pilot the other things? Like in a way where it's like how like Pinocchio's a little wooden puppet, but he has a soul inside, which is probably a horrible way to describe that.
That's a great way to describe that, actually.
like it's not a little wooden puppet, but it's like. Oh god, I don't even want to bring up the Furbies again. Do you remember the little robot dogs that they had during the night?
Oh,
like the late
yes.
90s, early 2000s?
Yeah.
Like not quite the iDog. We hadn't reached that point yet, but they were like the little like it could get inside that through like the battery acid and pilot it.
Oh wow.
So it's not like a yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it could be literally like anything it decides to be within the reasons, the constraints that we give it. But like it's limited in the sense that like we're essentially just making like a liquid soul that can jump into other objects.
Liquid Soul, by the way, excellent name for a band.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I like this concept because if it has thoughts and feelings and emotions and stuff like that, but it requires something else to express those, that really, I don't want to say it's like ethically questionable, but it kind of is. Like you've created life without like, it's like I have no mouth, but I must scream kind of thing, you know, like literally.
Oh my God. Wow, it is. I wonder if it says anything about me that 2 out of the 3 creatures I've made on here are just ethical quandaries. I had this image in my head of like a little pool toy. I had like a little, like one of those stuffed little, like not stuffed, but like the little inflatable plastic things just filled with Plasticiemo.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. And so then you got like that little inflatable swan or like an inner tube or something like that, and suddenly it has opinions.
Yeah. yeah, like exactly like that.
Okay, so it's sentient enough that it can have its own emotions, but it's required, it needs to pilot something in order to express those emotions. And it's preferred target, for lack of a better word, is electronics or something of that nature. And then maybe if it's like really soured, so to speak, then it will also attach humans. Like maybe if its hunger goes unsated for long enough, it will go after like souls of other creatures, kind of thing. Like maybe
that's a really interesting, and like the more I think about it, the more fucked up the possibilities get. Concept, because like on paper, there's really not much of a difference between like taking control of like the parts of like a pool toy or like a little robotic toy to like pilot around and taking control of like a human body. Like we're just like kind of we're piles of flesh.
Yeah,
that are held together by electrical impulses. Not much different from what it's used to. And that form of control in and of itself. Could you imagine how terrifying it would be to have something like mechanically moving your limbs, mechanically controlling your breaths and like the beats of your own heart?
That is super unsettling. Wow. Yeah, I didn't really anticipate this much depravity when we were like, this name's cute. Gosh. No, but I like that. That seems like it's true too, because if it's just taking over things like electronics with like battery acid or like what do they have with the newer things? It's like the ion batteries or something like that. I don't know how those operate personally, but like rechargeable batteries.
I don't know how they work. Yeah, like the ones where you have to like bring them down to the recycling center. Initially I thought you had to do that with all batteries, so I was just holding them. But I recently found out you just need to do that with the rechargeable ones.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work at Staples as well. Not to jump back into my resume, but I used to work there, and I've literally had people bring in like full plastic bags of just like batteries, and I'm like, you could kill somebody with this, like just by swinging it wrong.
Look, I'm gonna be real here. Like, some of the most creative people are the people who have managed to bring even like you keep saying like, oh, like, you know, like I worked in delivery, I worked doing this. Like, I'm sure you have so many stories from being a delivery driver that you could start your own podcast, like just interviewing other delivery drivers and being like, oh yeah, that's some weird shit that I saw on my shift.
Yeah,
like I've heard some stories.
That's true. I mean, I've thought about doing like a work related one before, but it just never really like pans out. I'm just like, okay, well, whatever. I usually like, I'll look back on these things later on and be like, oh, rose colored glasses. It actually wasn't that bad. But then like the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's kind of fucked up that I had to deliver a 32-piece sectional to somebody's house one time.
That feels like a multi-truck, like you're caravanning at that point. Like,
yeah.
Gosh.
That's true.
That's the thing, though. Like, everybody's normal is they're normal because they're in it. Like, there's weird crap that happens to me and like people I know all the time, but like nobody thinks about it because like everybody, like if everybody stopped to think about how weird life can be, like you'd be sitting there all day.
It's true. I think that's why philosophers are typically like the way that they are, like at least in the classical sense. Like I always picture when I think of philosophers like the Family Guy bit where you see Peter Griffin sitting there like on a chair, like in the thinker pose, and his wife comes up to him and he's just like, and she's just like, you know, you got to find a job. And he's just like, why? And like, first of all, I relate, but
yeah. So, not to tap into my resume, but when I initially went off to college, I originally went off for forensic pathology, which put me in a much different circle of people than I was later put into being a writer and going for an English major. But weirdly enough, like, I don't know if it was due to like how my college was situated or just like a weird twist of fate, I found myself like involved with a fair number of like philosophers as an undergrad, and like, yeah, like there's just a vibe. Like, there are just people that I feel like should be paid to think in a way that causes other people to be upset, because I feel like they're points that we have to push ourselves philosophically, like emotionally, empathetically as people, where we have to get outside of our comfort zone a little bit, because that reminds us like what's important, what it is to be human. And like we're kind of touching on that here with the character design. Like, we're talking about like the atrocities of like humankind and like what things are capable of doing. We basically created a creature only to feel suffering.
Yes.
But like we're doing that because like these stories are really important. Like, it's really important to think about, like, hey, what if there was a creature that could just make you feel good by rubbing it on you? Like, what would we do to it? And, like, what does that say to about us as, like, human beings? Like, what should we watch out for in ourselves? So, like, I 100% with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that's maybe an application, because, once again, something capitalism bad, to quote Steph Sterling, you know, maybe this is a thing that is exploited by big companies after a while, like in your story. Like, maybe this is how it's discovered, you know, by the protagonists, is because it's something that's used on workers to placate them and to make them more subservient, because they are like, it's somehow been programmed to well, I mean, I guess if it's just emoting its own emotions, maybe it doesn't have like a physical like pain or anything like that. Maybe it doesn't need to sleep. Maybe that's one of the other things about it, you know?
Well, if we make it a liquid and make it like I'm approaching this with the conceit that like if you separated it like if you had little globs of it, it would still be its own thing. Like each
Oh.
parts of it encapsulates itself.
Of course.
Because it's a liquid. And like the only other way I can think of doing that would be jellyfish style. And then like you run into like structure and like that would be hard to say like for like the story and design purposes. Like I want this to be more so like something that has a wider application, and like I feel like giving it like any sort of structure would impede that in some way.
That's true.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I get you.
I like the idea of like almost like this is a thing that, because of the way that it exists as life, like a jellyfish, it cannot truly die. So like if you put this thing in like a submersible like rescue unit, say for example to find like a bunch of like people that mysteriously went missing underwater in some sort of horrific like machine accident.
Yeah.
And like you needed something to go look for them that itself could not die from like being crushed to death or what have you. Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally activated my roommate's mechanical werewolf. Yeah, I just felt like I needed to give that a moment. Like I got a little bit too excited about character design, and my hand went out and I activated the werewolf, but it's gone now.
I get it.
But yeah, that's kind of like what I'm picturing here. Like you could put the sentient thing inside of a little robot submersible and send it to the bottom of the ocean. And if it gets crushed to death, it gets crushed to death. It had a traumatic experience with sentient life. It didn't die.
Yeah. It's just like, oh no, I've been crushed. Well, time to keep on going.
Oh no. I've been put through unspeakable horrors. And like that, like, I feel like on the face of it, like maybe like, on the face of it, maybe that doesn't sound too bad, like, oh, it's indestructible, but, like, if it's sentient and capable of relating, like, in a way that's, like, useful, like, where you can send it to rescue people, or where you can send it in situations where you couldn't send a human being, it can also experience trauma.
Yeah.
And the only reason it would have any reason to cooperate with us is if it liked us. So, like, what if this is, like, the dark outcome of Pinocchio, where, like, yeah, he's a little wooden boy, but little wooden boys can't die.
Oh.
Their creators can. The people they work with can. Like the like you could conceivably take one of these things, like say it isn't a work environment. You could conceivably take one of these things, put it in a little bottle, and have it survive like a mining accident, and like your group comes upon it like 100 years later and takes it out of the bottle, and it's like, where's all my friends?
Oh, God, that's so heartbreaking. Especially because I'm picturing this thing as having, like, a lot of innocence, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's cute. We have this tendency as people to, like, whenever we, like, work with, like, we anthropomorphize things and we tend to make them cuter.
Yeah. Okay, I just had to write down, like, it survives traumatic events, wonders what happened to its friends, and that it has some innocence.
Yeah, like, one of the things I really liked about, like, the Fallout games, I don't know how much this is a suspension of realism, but I liked how, like, after, I think, like, it's Fallout 4 specifically, like, after the bomb drops, like, your robot helper is still there. Like, there's still that connection to, like, the past, and that reminder that that past was, like, still real. And, like, I think there's a lot of potential for something like that could, like, be immortal, but at the same time, like, need that assistance, kind of like the genie in the bottle sort of situation where it can be trapped or it can be, like, disarmed fairly easily, but at the same time, like, is also, like, fairly indestructible. Yeah,
so it's not that it's completely indestructible, it's just that it's very... I guess we've said, like, it can't die, but, like, you can't destroy it. So you can still find it, like, even if it's in one of these situations, like you said, like a cave-in, or, like, in a situation where something is crushed deep underwater. And, like, even maybe back on the surface, like, I don't know if I want to say, like, the home body, but, like, the main, like, central kind of goo, for lack of a better phrase, it still feels that pain that happened to the part that's, like, detached from it and is, like, struggling to get back home. Maybe something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know.
No, I like that. Like, I'm thinking about, like, because like I wanna be able, because when it comes to like things that are indestructible or or at least like as resistant as what I'm thinking of, like I like giving them downsides, and like maybe that's just like a product of me writing at the time that I started writing on the internet and the place I started writing on the internet and the unconscious and probably unhealthy desire to avoid married Sue syndrome. But like I kind of want it to be like something where it's like relatively helpless without assistance, like something like it needs like a shell or like a body, otherwise it can't really do what it does. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It needs like some kind of protection, otherwise it's more or less what's the word I'm looking for here? I think that you phrased it perfectly. I understand exactly what you mean. Like it's indestructible, but in order for it to do anything, it needs to have some kind of casing or something to that effect. I'm sorry, I thought I saw a bug. It was just a little fly.
No, you're good.
But I get what you're putting. I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I think that's a really interesting way of going about it as well. I also try to avoid that kind of stuff, like, because if you make your monster too powerful, then it's just like it ends the world. Like, what's the point of like even trying to fight it if you can't destroy it, or like you can't defeat it at least?
Yeah.
So in this situation, like you can defeat it, but only by breaking its case, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's capable of speech, right? Like
Yes.
if it possesses something. What kind of accent?
Yeah, if it possesses something that can produce speech.
Okay.
I would say that it is capable of speech.
All right.
Do you think that it should be able to produce speech on its own in like a psychic sort of connection way, or do you think it should be limited by like whatever it controls? Like if it's got like a little robot dog for radio, it can talk, but like it can't talk if it's got like to use the pool toy example again, like if it's got like a little robot rubber thing, or like it possesses...
Like it can only say like these preset things as opposed to like free will over like what it can do. That's a good question.
Yeah, like is it, like if it possesses something that isn't capable of producing recognizable speech, like how does it cope? Like if it possesses a pencil sharpener, can you conceive of a situation in which it like belts out Morse code in like the whirring of the engine kind of thing?
That's a good idea. Like either that or else it has such control over the blades that it can like maybe like carve something into the pencil using like that kind of functionality. Yeah. But that would be really difficult to pull off, I feel like. But I
like the idea of limiting how it can communicate to force it to do weird shit to communicate. You get like that sort of vibe.
Yeah, like if it's something like a speak and say or a spell and say or whatever the heck that thing was called, you know, where you spell out words, then like maybe it can say something like specific, but first it has to spell it out. And then it will say it in that same kind of like monotone voice. Like it uses the voice of the thing that it's possessing, maybe. But also is limited by its functionality.
Yes.
So like the robot dog can't say much. It can mostly just say like bark or like...
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe you'd have to be like, okay, 1's for yes, 2 for no, kind of thing, you know, if it understands.
Yeah, like a Mr. Ed kind of vibe.
Yeah. Okay, I kind of like that. So it's limited by the technology. Something more complex maybe can say more things. So like if it was to possess like a PC, it would probably have more capabilities because PCs are able to recreate like any sound basically, especially with AI the way it is. Yeah.
Like you'd be able to like, I was thinking about that with AI because like at the same time, like earlier we agreed that it can like take over people, like where it can physically like, you know, force your heart to beat, move you around a little bit. If it can also take over electronics and produce like speech and sound and stuff that way, does that mean that if it took over somebody's body, that it would produce speech?
That's what
or that it could?
That's kind of what I pictured, was that it would be able to do like regular speech if it was to like take over a human.
Yeah.
And then
that would be creepy.
Yeah.
Because then it would just be limited to that person's voice, like the mechanical equipment that it had available.
Yeah. And I'm thinking as well that when it comes to something that's like with people, it might not be the same with machinery. Like maybe because machinery, especially things like that, like once it's, well, I guess if it's a PC, it's like plugged into the wall. So it's got like limitless power essentially until power runs out or power goes out. Or like if it's possessing like a robot dog or a Bluetooth speaker or whatever, then it runs out of like battery eventually. But like if it's people, I'm thinking that it would run out of battery, so to speak, maybe when it's absorbed all of the liquid inside of the person. So it will leave husks of just like dehydrated folks just like laying around.
That's wild. I like that.
Thank you.
Been doing a lot of resin printing lately, and I'm thinking I have the mental image of like when you pull the print like directly out of the resin, and you realize that the print has gotten fucked up. So like a lot of times there'll be like furrows or like parts of it won't print correctly, and like when you pull it out of the resin, like it just drips. And I'm picturing like the inside of like a desiccated husk of like a battery or like a person dripping with battery acid or like person acid, respectively.
Yeah, just like bile, just like, yeah. Oh, that's unsettling. Again, is the word of the day. So mark it off if you have it on your bingo card.
Yeah.
Wowee. Okay, so what other things can we add on to Plasticiemo to make it more? Is there anything, or are we satisfied with this like fucked up little puddle of like goo?
I don't know. I feel like I mean like we gave a backstory. Like this is a relatively a relatively friendly, like neutral at worst being created like for fun or for a purpose. And we've agreed that it's kind of got like the silky sort of soapy coloration to it.
Mm-hmm.
Does it occur naturally? Like, in the sense of, like, has it escaped? And if so, like, how is it found in the wild? I think that's, like, the only thing I want to wrap up. Because, like, I think it's really cool that it, like, possesses stuff, but, like, if you were to find it outside of, like, a constructed human environment, like, if one escaped and went feral, like, what would that look like? Because the example I think of in my head is like the Animorphs Yeerks, which are a parasitic and sentient species. And there's like a point in the books where they like raise the moral question of like, what do you do with a species that is reliant on being a parasite in this way? Like, what is the ethical thing to do? And there are a lot of like different solutions, and like I think one of them was that one of the Yeerks was transformed into like a whale. And like the idea of like in the absence of like of human created like of a human created husk, it would gravitate toward a specific type of like, to better describe it, like natural living. Sort of like the inverse of like when you find an octopus that's creating a husk out of garbage instead of mollusks, or like you have a natural thing that's using human garbage to like give itself like shelter when it would normally be a natural thing. This thing is artificial. If it were to parasitize something out in the wild, like would this be a thing that you would find in like say like what if it was something you'd find in like beavers or rats, or like a very specific sort of creature that has a lifestyle that would make sense with this vibe.
I like the idea of like it being in like, for lack of a better phrase, vermin or like varmints or what have you. I was thinking, what if when it got out, it maybe jumped into some wildlife until such a point when it got to a water source, and then it just infected that water source and that water supply, and so it went out to like different animals.
Oh, that would be interesting.
And then
so it could travel.
Yeah, and it's almost got like, it's almost a hive mind kind of situation where like it's experiencing all of these animals all at once as it like as they crawl throughout the world, even if they're not in like complete control of their faculties. And like this is why you would have something where like a stray like just a wild raccoon will like go up to people and like just be like pleasant with them, you know, is because it recognizes people.
Like rabies, but not rabies.
Yes, exactly.
Like almost like, I don't want to say good rabies because that's a whole other that's a whole other territory.
Maybe like anti-rabies kind of thing. Like,
yeah, like I like that. Like, and I like, how about this? How about the reason why it is so powerful yet it is so willing to work with us? What if the reason why it is the way that it is that it likes the variety of experiences? Like when it's used as an excavator in a big machine versus like when it's used like on different areas of a job site, it likes the variety of experiences it gets from that sort of thing. And like the natural equivalent of it going feral is it's like, I jumped from a raccoon to a salmon to a deer to a bird, and I got to experience all of these different ways of perception and living.
I love that. I think that's a fantastic idea and a great way to kind of make it ubiquitous, kind of like all over the place, you know, like it's kind of like in the one show, I don't remember what it is, when they're like anybody could be a Cylon. It's like anything could be possessed by Plasticiemo kind of thing, you know, and you wouldn't necessarily know because it's not necessarily evil, you know, it's not bad, like it doesn't really have morals, it's kind of an innocent thing, but like it tries to be good more or less most of the time, like by society's standards. Yeah, but its whole thing is like, hey, I like the experience of, I want to try being like a trout today, so I'm going to be a trout and like learn about that. Or like, I want to be a catfish. And so you go down and like, it's a catfish for a little while, and then it like becomes a strange man from Louisiana who fishes for catfish with his hands, you know?
I love that. And also like a thing that I feel like I should mention is like there would be reasons why I feel like a sentient creature that has those abilities would choose or like gravitate toward one sort of thing to the other, because like a one that like worked on a job site or worked in like artificially constructed environments, like it would have a variety of experiences, but it would have like these regularly set expectations, like it would have rules, it would have like things that it could follow. The feral one would be relatively more free as we understand freedom to be, but at the same time, because it's possessing like living creatures and having those experiences as living creatures, it experiences pain. A robot wouldn't feel pain, but a trout would if it was eaten by a bird.
Oh yeah.
And like going through that parasitoid cycle would by definition, like just even by existing as one of those animals, it would have experienced pain. So like as a sentient creature, like this little liquid, an ambivalent liquid, like they could have preferences one way or the other. Like one could be like, oh, I've tried working with people, I like people, but like there's nothing like being a wild animal, and yes, there is those experiences of pain, but like I enjoy that. And then there's could be another one that's like, well, you know, I can understand why you would like the freedom of that and like the variety of experiences you would have, but like I get satisfaction and like I get to work with these people and I get to see their families grow up and I get to know that I'm serving a larger purpose for society, and it could get enjoyment out of that.
Yeah,
like really real sentience.
Wow, I didn't expect this one to get so deep. No, I think that's a great like addition to it, like having multiple ones where it's like maybe one's more rigid and like, you know, into like the worker mindset kind of thing, whereas others are more into like freedom and like going about like just having the experience to experience things, and also is able to experience all of these things at once, like again as kind of a hive mind thing, because like you said, it's all the same thing, all trying to kind of what's the word I'm looking for here, reattach to one another, more or less. So maybe like once, if something were to happen and all of these little like liquid things like all make the pilgrimage back to a central point and they recombine, then suddenly it's like the most powerful being known to humanity because it knows everything.
That could be an interesting little concept too. Like, what happens when they split? Like, are they parts of a whole that, like, will they miss each other? Like, would they want to recombine, or would they want to go off and do their own thing? Like, there's so much you can do with a sentient creature like that.
Those are some great questions. Yeah. I feel like this one is like, incidentally, as you know, I was just gonna go do a pun on like plastic. Maybe like plasticine as its name. I don't think plasticine is even a word. It's malleable.
Why does it sound like a word?
Maybe
if it's not a word, it should be a word. Like,
let's look it up. Plasticine.
Here, like there's just it's a pleasant sound. Yeah, it's a word.
Yeah, a soft colored material used especially by children for modeling. So like Play-Doh. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a plasticine, almost kind of culture. What the fuck am I saying? Concept. To go along with the name Plasticiemo.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's malleable to your own heart's content. What you want it to be, more or less.
Yeah, it's bad because like I was like sitting there and I was thinking like, wow, like we at least know that like it could exist like harmoniously inside of a human body because Play-Doh is edible. I think it's very telling on my part.
Hey, you know, we've all had some interesting spaghetti in our lives, okay? Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I think that this is the logical endpoint for Plasticiemo. Like, I think that there's just so many questions that you could add on to this thing that would just like kind of flavor it to your own intents and whatnot, like your own stories. But I think that he's like, or it, the concept of Plasticiemo is so interesting. It's almost like it's like it's a newborn all the time, like experiencing new things, but it can be corrupted in some ways. Yeah,
I have a very large soft spot in my heart for characters that are baby. I don't know if we're both on Boy Scouts, so you've probably seen me posting it, but like you've seen my cat Himbo, right?
I don't remember. Let me take a look. I believe I've seen this, but I just want to make sure.
He's my pride and joy. I post both of them. I post Tendy and Himbo.
Oh yeah, sure.
Tendy's my roommate Lykios's cat, but like Himbo is like baby. He is the best way to describe Himbo would be to tell you exactly how I got him. He is a failed TNR.
TNR.
And TNR is short for trap, neuter, and release.
Oh.
So what he was supposed to do was they were supposed to neuter him, and he was supposed to be in a territory and like own it and be intimidating. But he failed that. He failed doing that. And I actually got a call from an old coworker of mine, and she's just like, "Look, I can't take another Siamese cat because I already have two, but there's this cat and I feel like he'd be perfect for you." And she sends me this little like shaken cat, and it is like the cutest thing, and I'm like, I have to have it.
Aww.
And that's how I met Himbo.
That's cute.
But yeah, no, he's wonderful. He is like he's the biggest baby. I love the concept of like, not like I don't like the concept of like innocence, but I like the concept of like like a character that is gentle in spite of like what it has experienced. Like the ability to persevere and still have like hope and empathy and kindness, despite being a soft thing in a harsh environment. Because it's very easy to be like brave and powerful and like assured of yourself when you're like a strong and confident thing, but like if you're like a little plasticine dude, if you're like a little soft fella, like it's harder to just
if you're a little Play-Doh guy,
soft or gentle person.
Yeah,
just a little guy.
Yeah. It's the name of the show, and we've come full circle. The plan all along. Okay. Well, I like Plasticiemo the way that he is. I like everything that we've done here so far. The Cassandra Moth. I like what we did with, what was the first one that we did? The really fucked up deer. Oh, the Clutterbuck. I had to skip back to my notes. Yeah, I think they're all really great. Is there anything you want to add to any of them?
I can't really think of anything. We've fleshed it out like really well. Like we've explored like a lot of different aspects of this from the perspective of somebody who writes to create, because I create monsters for completely different formats than you.
Yeah.
As somebody who's writing this like with the intention of like this being used in like a tabletop format, like what do you think are any sort of like things that we should like look back on or like tweak or adjust? Like, is there anything that you have in mind for your format that you think is important when designing these guys?
I want to say really quick, and this is kind of off topic, but I really appreciate your tendency to ask me questions, like as the host, because like nobody asks me questions, and I think that's really valuable. I think it's kept me very engaged.
Thank you.
I think that you could work just about any of these folks into a D&D campaign, into a Monster of the Week campaign. The only thing you'd really need to do is just to roll their like stat blocks, and that's going to be like the one thing that I could have trouble with, especially with something like Plasticiemo, because it is something indestructible, but the shell itself does not need to be indestructible. In fact, it kind of hinges on that. So I feel like with the knowledge that you really can't get rid of it. I mean, it makes sense that like it would just exist in the world, and that the only real way to try to like counter it, I guess, is to gather it all.
Like in order to translate Plasticiemo into something that you could use as a D&D table, would that require essentially like different tables for different like a different general categories of things it could possess?
Oh, yeah, I think so, because the way that I'm thinking about it, like Plasticiemo has maybe that's another thing about it, is that it has the ability to inhabit these things, but maybe it doesn't have quite a grasp over how to move a bugbear, or maybe it doesn't have like, it can't move the mouth of a deer exactly the right way to try to communicate what it's saying. So maybe it's a little bit limited because depending on its experience, like with these creatures. But I feel like otherwise it would just kind of possess these things and maybe amplify their ability to communicate with the players, while kind of, what's the phrase I'm looking for here? While kind of having like this symbiotic, maybe not even symbiotic relationship with it, but like, because I'm trying to think of ways like to make it evil, and frankly, I can't. I think that it's just like, it's maybe not lawful good, but like you said, like at least neutral, Yeah,
because like I feel like the reason, like I'm on board with you, and the reason I want to specifically give is that if it's a creature that thrives on a variety of experiences, it's going to want to continue to maintain relationships with the things that can give it those experiences. Mm-hmm. So if it was evil, like I picture like an evil character, like, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like it would have more of a reason to have a beneficial relationship, because it would be easier to have those experiences than being like, okay, like I dislike working with other beings for like a communal end. Unless I have, in all fairness and full disclosure, the lawful good, chaotic, evil alignment chart, like I get lawful and chaotic, but like evil and good has never been a concept that has been adequately explained to me in regards to like how it affects character design. And I know there's a lot of debate around that too.
To be fair, me either. I'm just like, yeah, I think that this person would be good, you know, or I think this person would be evil, like just on like the society standards list kind of thing. But what's that?
Alignment's like a vibe.
Oh yeah, no, I agree completely. Like, I'm just like, this is how I would play this character, you know? Yeah. And I feel like with this character, I feel like the one drawback about it, especially if it's inhabiting humans, is that it would have that really like uncanny valley kind of feel to it, you know? Like maybe when it possesses people, like they get kind of like
that.
Yeah.
I like the concept of like that kind of like changeling, like, oh hey, like it seems a little off kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like where it's like it can wear a human suit, but not as well as a human can wear a human suit.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it as well. Cause yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to like, it's you described it really well. It's just, it's wearing a human suit, but like it shows like little quirks that it's kind of like a tell, you know, like it doesn't move so good, or like it has trouble forming words, or, you know, something like that like maybe this person like didn't have that issue before. Like maybe it could even just take the form of like the disguise of like a sickness, more or less. Like people think that their loved one is just sick, when in fact they've been possessed by this creature, you know, that has kind of taken over their lives, more or less. Like not like with the intent of doing anything nefarious. It just wants the experience, you know, like you've said. But like obviously that would rub some folks the wrong way if you were just like hanging out with your buddy and then you find out this is just a symbiotic like thing that's like taking over my friend.
Yeah. I wonder too, like, because like we seem to be running with which I'm cool with, and I feel like we should. We're running with the assumption that its host isn't permanently harmed or like damaged because of that possession. Like, I mean, yeah, you could run to the concept of finding out your buddy's possessed, but like, what if your buddy's into it? Like, what if he likes? What if your buddy is just like, look, I'm ADD, I'm unmedicated. I would love every once in a while for there to be, maybe more so like on my shoulder than inside me, for there to be like a little buddy that's just like, hey, Ben, you've been looking at this Wikipedia entry for 30 minutes now. You were supposed to work on this commission. We're working on this commission now. You're closing this tab.
Yeah.
Like, that's... Like, I wouldn't say no to that, and I feel like there are some people that would agree with me.
No, I would agree with that. As long as they weren't
permanently hurt by it.
Yeah, no. If I could find myself like a way to like keep myself on track with like things, like, yeah, no, that would be perfect for that kind of like application. And maybe if it's unable to miss each of its little fragments, maybe it's like distributed, like, again, through capitalism in like pill form or something like that. Or maybe just like, you know, I don't know. Like, I do like
you're like at like a party and your buddy from like that you haven't seen in like 2 years is trying to sell you on Plasticiemo, like it's fucking Tupperware.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey dude, like you remember me? You remember how much of a mess I was? But I started taking this shit, and like he like pulls out like a thing of pills from his pocket.
Yeah.
And he's like, I started taking this shit and I've been on track. And like, I mean, like, it's got me a little groggy, but like, and as you're talking to him, like the bits of Plasticiemo like start coming out of the sides of his mouth.
Yeah.
Like that's what I had in my head.
Like, it looks like something that's nefarious, but it itself is not, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like that idea of just like some weird, like, so your friend like at the party being like, hey, you know how they have virtual assistants now? Well, I got this thing. It works even better.
Yeah, just my little buddy who lives inside me.
Yeah.
Like-
I just gotta take a pill like every once in a while. Or just like maybe it'll be a one-time thing even. Yeah, I like this. This sounds I mean, I think that's a very practical application for Plasticiemo. And then I think that if you were running a story and like it eventually gathered the ability to miss its compatriots, because let's say like when they were in capsule form they talked to each other, you know, this is kind of going back to like the humanization of like inanimate objects kind of thing. Like maybe it starts to like miss those other pieces of itself, then it would start to like sour kind of thing and start like seeking its other parts, you know, and try to come together and like compare notes, for lack of a better term. And that could be like a hook for a story, you know, like these guys were like all really focused. Now all of a sudden they're dead and like dehydrated. And it's because all of their Plasticiemo like just absorbed all of their, you know, materials and fucked off to try to find each other, you know? I don't know if that makes sense. That's kind of, I don't know. But the rest of it's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, I really like the freaks that we've created together.
Oh yeah. Bunch of little weirdos those guys are. Yeah, I don't think I've got anything else to add. Do you have anything else you want to put on there?
No, I can't really think of anything.
All right. I mean, I've been recording for about 3.5 hours, so.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, like 2 seconds beforehand. I was just like, yeah, we're at the 3.5 hour mark.
Yeah. I'm going to need to have dinner soon.
Yeah,
okay.
Me too, actually.
Do you, so really quick, Ben, where, just to like let people know, what kind of projects are you working on? Where can people find you online? What do you want to plug?
So primarily now what I do is what I like to describe as like social engineering of social media management, in which I look at social media sites and I find ways to break them. Not so much like breaking in the sense of like, oh, I'm a cool hacker, but more in the sense of like, hey, if you're a small business owner and you're trying to find an audience, how do you most effectively manipulate social media sites into finding you the audience that you want? And that's kind of what I do. My focus in particular right now is I am working on, once again, constructing a stream team to fundraise on Tiltify. If you are interested in learning how to use streaming to fundraise for like local charities and stuff in your community, feel free to reach out to me. I've created a couple of tutorials on that and I'll be creating more. The whole thing is just like, hey, we have this amazing, fairly new tool, and I want to use it to bring people together and to solve problems.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great cause for sure. Again, I mean, using social media for good instead of just capital.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, anything like that is inherently going to be created to serve an end purpose, and that end purpose is never going to serve the average person. And if the average person can figure out how to use the structures that already exist to get a little ahead and to you know, like, get themselves into a little bit better position that helps everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the little guy and the big guys are doing the thing, why shouldn't you also do the thing? You know, why?
Exactly.
I mean, obviously within reason. All right. Was there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it. This has been great. I really like this concept. Like, I haven't really heard of a podcast like this, and I'm excited to see what you do with it. I'm really excited to see how, like, the variety of perspectives for the people you bring on here are going to inform, like, monster design, because we've had some really interesting conversations about, like, you know, like, the nature of sentience and, like, gender and, like, what it is to be a human being. And, like, I feel like seeing you bring a variety of perspectives from like all sorts of different people was going to be really cool. I want to see the freaks you make.
Thank you. Fun. Thank you so much. I've had so much fun as well. I feel like this has been the most enlightening episode. Like the last 2 episodes I've had have been like both extremely creative and very thought-provoking. And so I'm really grateful for you for coming on here, and lending me your ideas, lending me your brain, so to speak.
Well, I appreciate you just having me on here and giving me a platform to make monsters with you.
Absolutely. Fun. Yes. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Listeners, please go and check out Ben's work. Hachiko, I don't know if you want to put out your social media things here or not, like your ats or anything.
You can find me on most websites as HachXO. That is HACHX and 0. On other sites, on Blue Sky, you can find me at pavlovforgoths.com, and you can pretty much find most of my updates on my project on that website going forward. That's pavlovforgoths, GOTHS.com.
All right, awesome. Thanks again for being here, Ben, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to Just a Little Guy. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please leave a review on your podcast app of choice so that it will be recommended to other listeners like yourself. If you'd like to support us monetarily, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/justalittleguy. That's Lil, like if you chopped off the first 3 letters of lilac. Want to check out Ben's other works but don't want to do all that pesky typing? Don't sweat it. I've provided all the links to his projects in the description, so be sure to go and give him a look. Please remember to subscribe so that you won't miss any of our new monstrous creations, and until next time, beware the Cassandra Moth.